I think we're going to start now, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, Siraj, can we start? Are you ready?
Is the website available?
Yes, we are. We are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, members.
Good morning.
Good morning, members and officials. We have received an apology from Member Bartman and Member Philander. Mr. Allen will be standing in for Member Bartman and Mr. Mitchell will be standing in for Member Philander. So as per Standing Rule 82, 3, in the absence of the chairperson from a meeting, the committee must elect one of its members to be acting chairperson at the meeting. So I'd like to take nominations. Member Mitchell.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Procedural Officer. I move that we propose Member Mackenzie to chair this committee meeting.
Are there any further nominations? Is there a seconder?
Supported. Supported.
Supported.
Supported.
Mackenzie, you may take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ricardo Mackenzie. I'm chairing this meeting in the absence of my colleague, and I wish a speedy recovery. It's Monday, the 23rd of November. It's now 9:03, and we're going to formally start the Budget Committee. Members, can you just introduce yourself before we continue?
Thank you,
Good
Chair.
morning, Chair.
Member Allen, go.
Good morning, Regan Allen.
Good morning, Chair. Dalen Mitchell.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Derek America, alternate member.
Morning, Chairperson and everybody.
Morning, everybody.
It's morning, Chairperson and everybody in the meeting. It's Lulama Mvimbi, member of the committee.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Jonathan Benjamin, National Treasury.
Okay, can we just continue with the members of the committee first, then we'll go to our colleagues at National Treasury. I see Member Kondlo, you're here.
Morning, Chairperson of the session. I'm a member Nkondlo, a member of the committee.
Thank you. I said Chief Wenger here. Okay, Member Wenger. Okay, we will recognize later. Can I start with my colleagues, Wasima, Lizette, and Shiraz?
Good morning, Chairperson. It's Wasima, the Procedural Officer.
Good morning, Chairperson. Lizette Kluter, Senior Procedural Officer.
Good morning, Chairperson. Siraj, ICT.
Thank you. I saw Member Wenger, you with us now?
I'm indeed, sorry, Chair. I was on mute.
Thank you. Member Mitchell, your hand is up again.
My apologies. I'll lower it now.
Thank you. Can I hand over to the Provincial Treasury?
Good morning, Chairperson. It's David Savage here from the Provincial Treasury.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Can the rest of your team introduce themselves as well, please?
Yes, please. Dr. Hubman.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Roy Hubman. I'm DG in the Provincial Treasury.
Provincial Treasury.
Well, I didn't hear name. All I heard was Provincial Treasury. Can you go again, ma'am?
Good morning. Apologies. I hope you can hear me now. Claire Horton. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from Provincial Treasury?
I think that's it from our side, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Our colleagues from National Treasury, can you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you very much. It's Wendy Fano from National Treasury Intergovernmental Relations, and we've got two more colleagues that will introduce themselves. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, honourable members. Kodisa Muduganele from National Treasury, working in the Intergovernmental Relations Division. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning once again, colleagues. Jonathan Benjamin from the National Treasury, Public Sector Policy and Remuneration.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from National Treasury?
That's it from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fanau. I saw our colleagues, members, other members joined as well. Members, can you just introduce yourself if you haven't done so, please?
Good morning, Matlodi Maseko. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Morning, Chairperson, members and colleagues. Cameron Dugmore, ANC.
Thank you, Mr. Dugmore. Member Bosman. I see Member Bosman is here, but we will come to him later. Thank you, colleagues. Is there anyone else that I...
Person,
yeah.
Morning, Killian Bosman.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on this call that I did not introduce? Please feel free to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Good morning, Chairperson. My name is Randall, PEC member for Salga Western Cape.
Thank you, Mr. Swartz. Thank you for joining us. Anybody else? Okay, thank you all for joining us. We will continue with the meeting. Please note, I'm just going to share the rules of engagement for this meeting as we continue. The following points are taken from 2.1 to 2.4 from chairing a meeting for all the members of the Western Cape Legislature. All members are to be muted at the beginning of the meeting to avoid any background noises. The members to flag the points of orders in the chat function of MS Teams. All videos and audios must be switched off to improve the quality of the connection. However, if an official or anyone is speaking, they may put on their mic and the video. And please switch off your mics once you finish speaking. And even if you do switch on your mic, please, I do encourage you not to speak. Sometimes people have too much faith in the mute button. We're going to continue with the presentation. So the briefing by the National Treasury on the second division of Revenue Amendment Bill, B24 of 2020. I know that the presentation was put on earlier. Wasima, can we continue? And Mr. Fano and the team, can you continue with the presentation, please?
Thank you very much. Who will flag the presentation? Will it be ourselves or yourselves?
Chairperson, we made arrangements that National Treasury will be flagging their own presentation. Mr. Molu.
Is the presentation showing?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Kolisan, can you do it from your side? I've got challenges lately with link loading.
I've flagged it. Can everybody see it?
Yes, I can see it. Members, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it. Can see it, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll start with the presentation and then I'll hand over to Kodisang to deal with the local government issues. And Jonathan Patrick will also, Benjamin will also assist with answering the questions. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. What we're going to present today is the second division of Revenue Amendment Bill, and it's required in terms of the Money Bills and Related Matters Act, where we're going to set out both the changes to the provincial allocations as well as the municipal allocations as contained in the 2020 Division of Revenue Second Amendment Bill. Next slide, please. And what this shows is the regional legislation that we published in February 2020, and that is the table at the top. And there you had two columns. You had column A that indicated the allocations for 2020/21, and then we had a column B that indicated the forward projections for 2022/23 and 22/23. So those columns, column B is not contained in the amendment bills. It is the forward projections and it's unaltered for now. But what happened in the June legislation that we did, we took the top column A and we split it into 3 columns. And what was contained in the left-hand column is the actual allocations that were published in the February budget. And then the column A, the middle column, then indicates the adjustments that were made as part of the first adjustments budget process. And then the right-hand column then shows the new total. What this Division of Revenue Second Amendment Bill does, it then took those columns and split it into 4. So what the first left-hand column shows is the original amount published in February. The column right next to it then indicates the amount that was published in June. And then what the second from the right column indicates is the adjustments that will be made now. And then the column on the right-hand side then indicates the new totals. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, what we'll take you through now are the changes to the provincial allocations, both the provincial equitable share allocations as well as the provincial conditional grants. And I'll start with the 2020 adjustments to the provincial equitable share. And in the table, you could see that there's a number of changes made in this adjustment. There's additions made for the Presidential Employment Initiative. Some of the money is allocated through the provincial equitable share and some monies are allocated through the provincial conditional grants. Then that's an addition. Then there's also money made available through the unforeseen and unavoidable process for food relief. That's for funds that provinces committed towards that project, and 500 million is made available for that. That's also addition. And then there's reductions made for the public service wage bill. And that announcement was made in the 2020 budget in February, but it was never factored into the provincial allocations or the national allocations. So what this adjustments budget does, although it was announced in 2020 in February, it is now only being affected as part of the actual reductions in the provincial fiscal framework. And the overall reduction is 25.3 billion rand, and the reduction for the Western Cape is 2.4 billion rand. And the adjustment for addition for food relief for Western Cape is 51.2 million, and the Presidential Employment Initiative, there's addition of 814.3 million rand. So those are the additions, and those will then be reflected in Schedule 2 of the Division of Revenue as the totals showed in the right-hand column. So it's a combination of additions and reductions, and this table gives you the breakdown of those two amounts. In terms of the Presidential Employment Initiative, that is for education and education assistance at schools, for cleaners as well as screeners, reading assistance, and after-school care as well, and as well as additional money for to save school governing body posts at fee-paying schools and government-subsidized independent schools. And the details of that was contained in the allocation letter that was sent through to the Provincial Treasury. Next slide. Then there's also changes to the provincial conditional grants for the Presidential Employment Initiative, and that is then added to a number of conditional grants. There's one for added of 213 million, and this is not for the Western Cape. This is for the country as a whole for HIV and tuberculosis, malaria, and community outreach grant under the community outreach services component for the recruitment, training, and procurement of personnel protective equipment for additional community health workers and outreach team leaders, and the procurement of that kits for those health workers. Then there's also 180 million added to the statutory human resource training and development grant for the appointment of enrolled nurses and assistant nurses. Then there's also money made available for ECD development for salary top-ups and additional compliance support duties that, for example, such as PPE and the like. Then also there's additional money added of 630 million for the provincial roads maintenance grant, and it's linked to the Shahamba Sonke program, and it's specifically linked to the maintenance of provincial roads. Next slide. And then there's also further changes made to the provincial conditional grant. As we're aware that 10.5 billion has been made available to cater for the rescue plan of SIA. And although no reductions are made to the provincial equitable share, there are reductions made to provincial conditional grants in the amount of 1.3 billion for provinces. And what the next two slides show are the total amounts nationally, not for the Western Cape province. And if we can just look at these, Kolisang, next slide. And then also, importantly, there's also money rolled over for the school infrastructure backlogs grant, but it does not have implications for the Western Cape province. Next slide. What this slide then indicates is, and remember I said we could skip over the other two slides because it does not indicate the additions and reductions to the Western Cape, it just indicated the totals. What this slide indicates is the total that's amendments for the Western Cape province. In terms of the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program grant, or CASP, there's a reduction of 14 million. In terms of the Lima Letsema projects grant, there's a reduction of 5 million. And in terms of the Land Care Program grant, there's a reduction of 1 million. And that's all towards the SIA rescue plan. Then there's also some reductions made to health grants, but there's also additions made to the health grant to support the Presidential Employment Initiative, and also that is also then reflected as a positive of 155 million added to the National Health Insurance grant. And then there's the rest are shown as reductions. And under the Human Settlements Development Grant, there's also for the reductions made to the Title Deeds Restoration Grant of the 37 million rand, and also to the Provincial Emergency Housing Grant, there's a reduction of 273 million rand, and that's all got to do with the SIA rescue plan. Next slide. Okay, what the slide then indicates, as I indicated previously, money is made available for the Presidential Employment Program under the ECD program, and 496 million is made available to the Western Cape province. Then there's some reductions made to Community Library Services grant, and also the Mass Participation and Sports Development grant. And as I indicated also earlier on in the presentation, there's also money made available for the Presidential Employment Program under the Roads Maintenance Grant, and 630 million is allocated to the Western Cape province. Then what the next portion of the table then indicates are just the changes made to the indirect grants. This means it is money that's spent on behalf of the province by the National Department, and it just indicates how it impacts on the Western Cape province in terms of its grant and aid money. So it is projects that's added in terms of the school infrastructure backlogs grant, and then there's some reductions made to the National Health Insurance indirect grants. Next slide. And what this slide then just indicates are then how it's, the additions made, the reductions made, and the total adjustments. It just makes it for easier reading, because if you've got a plus and you've got a minus, then you don't know how the allocation is changed individually, because it can camouflage when there's, say, for example, addition made and there's also a reduction, that you don't see the total change. So this is just what this slide indicates. Next slide, please. And the same with regard to this slide. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, in terms of changes made to conditional grants, this is just to enable for the Presidential Employment Initiative to have conditions attached to the grant. And it's added to the HIV, TB, malaria, and community outreach grant. It's also added to the Statutory Human Resources Training and Development grant, also the ECD Development grant, and the Provincial Roads Maintenance grant. So we'll put requirements on transferring office and also receiving officers to report and to provide specific information with regard to these projects, so that we can ensure that there's reporting on these grants, both in terms of expenditure as well as performance. Next slide. And this is just a continuation of changes made to conditional grants, and these are to deal with changes and corrections that's needed in terms of the February conditional grants that we've published, and it's not related to the PI Presidential Employment Initiative, and it does not impact directly on the Western Cape province, because these changes relate to other provinces. Next slide. And I'll then hand over to my colleague, Kolisang, to go through the local government changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Here's a summary of the local government changes. As mentioned earlier, 10.5 billion rand is required for the rescue plan for SAA. As such, the local government conditional grants will be reduced by 613 million. And below are just a list of grants that are affected by this. As Wendy had mentioned earlier, this is just the quantum of funds taken from each grant, and we'll show the impact on the Western Cape a little bit later on. Further to this, there's a rollover funds. 390 million is rolled over in the Urban Settlements Development Grant to fund commitments for bulk infrastructure related projects in Nelson Mandela Bay. 98 million rand is also rolled over in the Public Transport Network Grant for public and non-motorized infrastructure, also in Nelson Mandela Bay. And lastly, 307 million is rolled over in the Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant for drought and COVID-19 water and sanitation interventions nationwide. There's also additional funds for the Water Services Infrastructure Grant. This is reprioritized from the department's budget into the indirect component of the Water Services Infrastructure Grant to Lekwa local municipality, and 12 million rand is directed towards that municipality through the indirect component of the Water Services Infrastructure Grant. Here's a summary of the changes just across the board, not necessarily Western Cape. So as you'll see that there are no changes to the equitable local government equitable share, and direct conditional grants have been revised downwards by 51 million rand to 40.2 billion. And also indirect grants have been reduced downwards to 6.6 billion rand. So the impact of these reductions to Western Cape is seen in this slide. So as for summary purposes, infrastructure transfers to local government have been reduced downwards to 3.3 billion rand. Indirect transfers have been also reduced downwards to 152.7 million, and capacity building grants have been also reduced downwards to 178.9 million. And these are both separated into direct transfers and indirect transfers. Direct transfers have been reduced downwards by 205 million, while indirect transfers have been reduced downwards by 265 million, and they weren't affected in the second adjustments bill. These are just purely from the first adjustments bill. And the total for the Western Cape municipalities with regards to conditional grant allocations have been reduced downwards by 80.6 million rand to 3.5 billion rand. With regards to changes to frameworks for errors and omissions, an error was found in the Rural Roads and Asset Management System grant. The due date of the submission of road condition data is corrected from 31 September to 30 September 2020. In the Municipal Infrastructure grant, allocations were corrected for ring-fenced sports projects in the grant. 25 million rand is shifted from Musina local municipality to Polokwane local municipality, and 9 million rand is shifted from Swellendam local municipality to Mossel Bay local municipality. And that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Kolisang, is there anything else that you guys from National Treasury wants to add on this particular presentation? Ms. Wendy?
Thank you. We conclude with this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I'm going to give you an opportunity just to for questions and answers by show of hands. I'll be monitoring the hands. See the hands going up. Okay, we'll start by Member Darkmore, then Member Kondlo. I'll see the two of you for now. You can continue. Wendy and the team, if you guys can just take down the list of questions, we'll do a first round, and then you can just indicate who will answer the questions afterwards. Thank you. Member Darkmore, you can continue.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to all the colleagues. Chair, you would recall that when the Premier, sorry about that, when the Premier spoke shortly after the President had delivered his speech on economic recovery, that the Premier claimed that the Western Cape's budget would be cut by 10 billion rand. Now, I know that we are dealing here with the Division of Revenue Second Amendment Bill, but we have representatives here from the National Treasury. So I would just like to ask a very direct question. Is it true or not that the Western Cape budget is going to be cut by 10 billion rand? Because the Premier is on record as saying that. That's my first question. The second question that I would like to ask is in regard, and I think that we really welcome the 496 million rand allocated in terms of the presidential public employment program for ECD. Could we get some particular detail on that? Is the intention here to fund ECD practitioners? Is it and what is the number of practitioners that, if that is the case, that the 496 million would actually cover in the Western Cape, and for what duration of time? And then in regard to the roads, the rural roads allocation of 654, how is the Treasury going to ensure, in terms of its oversight mechanisms, that small black contractors are actually benefiting, and the local communities in which these roads are going to be built? Because we have a tendency that very often the major construction companies would benefit, and not necessarily small contractors, emerging contractors, and actual community members who live in the areas where these roads are going to be built. If you could just provide information as to why Swellendam Municipality had to surrender that amount to the Mossel Bay Municipality. And then just a final question. I mean, there's always the danger in public employment programs that there is the potential for manipulation of appointments, whether it's because of patronage, or whether it's to achieve political gain. So how does the Treasury plan to ensure in terms of its monitoring role of the Provincial Treasury, that this does not happen, and that people, irrespective of party affiliation, who qualify for these amazing opportunities that the President has emerged with? And then my final question is that, it's clear that the President has launched the Presidential Public Employment Program from a national level. Is the National Treasury encouraging provincial governments as well as local municipalities to also look at their own budgets in regard to public employment programs? I think all of us would agree that as we're trying to recover the economy, the public employment initiatives are one way of ensuring that our communities actually are able to find some form of employment. But it would seem to me that it shouldn't only be the national government that is looking at public employment programs out of their own resources. So is there any thinking in the National Treasury about a framework for provincial and local municipalities to also look at their resources to initiate public employment programs? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mkondlo.
Thank you, Chairperson. My questions maybe starting. Let me thank the presentation, and I think one, because was sitting in the joint committee of the NA and NCOP at just a overall understanding of this presentation, but I appreciate the Western Cape specifics in as far as these adjustments are concerned. I just wanted to understand, I think on the slide number 17, around the adjustments to the Western Cape municipal allocations. If I can understand specifically, when we speak about the municipal infrastructure grants, I'm just going to go on the direct transfers. If some kind of an explanation of detail of which are these specific municipalities that, there's this adjustment downwards, and what would be some of the rationale for these, including the public transport network grant, which is adjusted downward with about, I think about 51.3 million, if I'm not mistaken, including the water services infrastructure grant. What would be those, and how would those impact on service delivery, including, I think, in the indirect, the 205 of infrastructure skills development grant. What nature of projects are these, if that information is available, and its implications to service delivery? If I can get that understanding, and then Chair, I want perhaps this to both National Treasury and the province. I just want to understand, because I think the debate that was in the joint committee, earlier on when National Treasury was presenting there, actually, firstly, when there was the Fiscal Commission and the Budget Office, was around the balance, given where we are, the balance of, these issues we always raise concern about, when it comes to adjustments of budgets and where budgets are moved or taken away, versus, the situation of lack of spending, which I think the AG has been indicating for some years now, and Western Cape is also not shared in that, in terms of including in some of the grants, that has to be sent back because of lack of spending. And sometimes, where we find some of the challenges even in the manner of spending with supply chain issues. So this is one issue I'm raising to both the National Treasury and the Provincial Treasury, that what part or what is the extent of that particular conversation as it relates to this particular adjustment, in trying to mitigate on those particular challenges. Because whilst we speak about, these adjustment, and we will be looking at, the financial performance, where sometimes, yes, in the province, in the main, we get these clean audits, but whilst we get these clean audits, there's a second element to that question of the actual, performance, that is the service delivery performance, with some of those challenges. So I'm trying to understand what comfort would both National Treasury and Provincial Treasury give to us at this level around, the manner and the speed at which these particular issues are being resolved in the municipalities regarding the issue of spending capacity, but that spending that also aligns to a real impact, in as far as service delivery. And perhaps the colleague at SALGA can also be able to just shed some light with us in this regard, because I think this is one area one has been very much concerned about, in as far as this particular issue is concerned, even in the municipalities. I want to make an example about the city of Cape Town as an example, amongst some of the grants that have been, sent back unspent, and repeatedly, whilst you've got serious service delivery challenges. And I want to check with SALGA the extent to which, SALGA in the province monitors this particular spending issues, and actually assist these particular municipalities where AG has been raising these matters repeatedly as part of his audit findings, but still there is little improvement in that regard. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Mkondlo. Honorable Mvimbi.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. Just maybe in addition to some of the questions that have already been raised, especially on the issue of the relief plan to SAA of 10 billion, if maybe it's not true that the Western Cape will be losing 10 billion of its budget, as was indicated earlier on by Honorable Moore. Now, if it's not 10 billion of the Western Cape, maybe of that 10 billion, if it's from provinces, how much is the contribution of that 10 billion that is coming from the Western Cape? If maybe Provincial Treasury will be able to shed some light on that. The second question, Chair, will be around, I think it's on slide 4, which deals with changes to the provincial equitable share. At the bottom, there is a note there that says that allocation to provinces determined in terms of the application received. Are these applications still to be received, or have they already been received? I just wanted to get an indication on that while I am on equitable shares. I just wanted to get an indication, because apart from the problem that is always raised about equitable shares of the formula, there's always unhappiness around the formula. I think when we had an engagement with the FFC, they've also tried to explain how the formula works, and I think also on a number of occasions, even the national and I think to a certain extent provincial treasury also tried to explain how does the formula work. But I think one of the requirements in the formula is the consultation with the respective provinces. I just want to check whether with this allocation that has already been done, has there been some consultation with the provinces, or in particular with the Western Cape province, because that's always the concern that is raised by members, especially when we are actually dealing with the adjustment of budget. There's always concern that there seems to be no consultation to respective provincial government. But on this particular one, I just wanted to check whether has there been one, especially with reference to the Western Cape in particular. Then my last question, Chairperson, also related to a question raised previously by Honorable Dagmo regarding Swellendam and Mossel Bay. Now, in the slide, it's indicated there it's an error. I just want to, was it maybe a printing error before that? It was money that was wrongly, through printing error, allocated to Mossel Bay, or is a reallocation that maybe Swellendam could not spend this money and then now is being reallocated to Mossel Bay? Can we get some clarity there? What kind of error is that? Because it will seem a very unfair error, or if it's a reallocation, a bit unfair, because an already established municipality like Mossel Bay, I think we will prefer that if there's going to be some kind of money, especially if for the kind of development that is meant for, you will think that a municipality like Swellendam actually needs that money more than is actually needed by Mossel Bay. So I think maybe if we can just get some clarity on that. I think I'm going to stop there for now, Chairperson.
Thank you, Member Wenger.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one very brief question. I'd just like to understand when this second division of revenue bill was tabled with the NCOP, please.
Thank you, Member Wenger. We'll get to that. Wendy and team, if you got all the questions, can I add one or two more?
Certainly, we please.
Okay, Derek America, before I go, Derek, Member America.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'd like to know who makes a decision in terms of transferring allocations from municipalities in the Western Cape. Is it Provincial Treasury or National Treasury? And have municipalities been informed about these reallocations, and with particular reference to the Swellendam matter? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to add one or two questions from my side. I would just like to get an understanding, because we obviously talking about, and I know when the Financial and Fiscal Commission came before us, we talked about the Equitable share formula, and the later Professor Plaatjes always went into detail with us. When we discussed allocations, or rather the reduction of funding to provinces, what criteria did National Treasury, and I just want to get, and I'm happy some of our colleagues from provinces also here, what criteria did National Treasury use to determine, for example, the reduction on health funding, the reduction of education funding to the Western Cape vis-a-vis the Eastern Cape vis-a-vis Gauteng to make up the actual final amount. Similarly, for example, the reduction of the police services, was there a centralized formula that National Treasury used, or did National Treasury give each department, like National Department of Education, the National Police Department, and say, guys, police, we need you to give us X amount, you determine how. How was that done? Because that brings me to my second question. If we look at the Department of Education, for example, if one look at some of the baseline reductions, and it was in your presentation, the Education Infrastructure Grant, 159 million rand, the Medicine Science Technology Grant, 5 million. If you look at that funding compared to the movement of learners, for example, this year in January, the Western Cape received 19,000 learners, and Gauteng received probably double that amount. So clearly, based on the movement of learners from different provinces, likely to happen again in a month's time, we're going to sit with the same problem, and not in a month, in 2 months' time. Provinces like the Eastern Cape or any other province that provide learners to Gauteng into the Western Cape, and I think KZN also is now seeing a significant increase. How did your formula determine not to take money where learners are reduced, for example, or feeding schemes, for example, are reduced versus vis-a-vis provinces like the Western Cape and Gauteng, where learners are increasing? And that will obviously be a technical answer, but I'm keen to understand that so we can also understand on what basis did you take money from certain provinces. Understand that the political decision was taken that you need to cut the fat at the top, but how did the technical and how was that assessment done? And was it a desktop exercise, similar to the, just on the sub-question to that, was it a desktop exercise, or did officials from Treasury physically go to provinces to see the school in Mthatha does not have 1,000 learners, it's got 300 learners. A school in Mitchells Plain does not have 1,000 learners, got 1,500 learners. Was it a technical exercise, or did they physically inspect those schools to justify taking money from provinces such as the Western Cape? And that question will really determine all my questions, because it will be the same for Department of Health. It'll be the same for agriculture or any municipality that has received a reduction of funding, whether it's infrastructure or skills development levy or any other funding that has made. And the other question is, last night the Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, tweeted, do we need a national airline, and do we need, etc. And there's a few of his tweets. And I don't want to go into political argument on that, because that's something else. But the technical argument, was that question not asked or answered when the officials technically compiled the requirement for this 10 billion rand? Before they went to provinces and say, guys, cut health, cut education, cut policing, did the officials not technically do an assessment on SA and say, we don't need SAA because this 10 billion is going to cripple the police in provinces such as the Western Cape that's already under-resourced, the health in our hospitals during a pandemic, it's already under pressure. Was there a technical assessment done, not the political answer, a technical assessment done? And where can we find that technical assessment to say, don't do this, do X? Thank you. And that will determine my other questions. Thank you very much. You can continue to answer now, Wendy and team.
Thank you very much. I'll start and I'll then ask my colleagues to come in as well. And I'll go from the top. Maybe if we can just go back to slide number, the one, Korisang, can you just flight it where the provincial equitable share formula is indicated? The slide changes to provincial equitable share. Okay, what this slide indicates, and this slide indicates the reductions that's made to the provincial equitable share for the Western Cape. And it indicates, the reason why I wanted to show this one, because it contains all the details, it indicates that there's been an addition in terms of the Presidential Employment Initiative of 814.3 million rand. There's been an addition for food relief of 51.3 million rand. And then there's been a reduction for the public service wage bill, the wage freeze in year of 2.4 billion rand. And then if it's netted out, you get to a reduction of 1.5 billion rand. So the provincial equitable share for the Western Cape is reduced by 1.5 billion rand. Then if you can go to the slide that indicates the change, just a few slides on that shows the conditional grants. Just go on still. Next one. Next one. This. No, you're going too fast. Back. One more. This one then indicates the additions made to conditional grants, and that indicates that there's addition made of 771 million. And the reason why that's an addition is largely for the Presidential Employment Initiative programs, although there's also reductions to conditional grants. And then if you take it together, you could see that it's not 10 billion rand reduction in the Western Cape allocation. Thank you. That's the first one. So the reduction is definitely not 10 billion for the Western Cape in year. It is below 1.5 billion rand. But it contains of a number of pluses and minuses. Like I say, if you just look at the totals, it shows it underplays some of the reductions that's made to the provincial equitable share, for example, because there's also additions made to the provincial equitable share. If you then, with regard to the question of the ECD practitioners and how many practitioners it relates to the Western Cape province, that answer we unfortunately not have. The National Department of Social Development will hopefully be able to provide that amount as the department responsible for administering the grant. But we can answer the question of when will the money come to an end. All the money in terms of the Presidential Employment Initiative program must be spent by the 31st of March 2021. It will be then subjected to the rollover requirements in the process as well. Then the question was asked, a concern raised regarding the provincial roads maintenance program and whether it will go to large companies or whether it will be targeted at small black communities that must benefit. And that is the whole intention of the Shamba Sonke program. It is community and small SME based. So it's definitely not intended to benefit big industrialists in the process. Then with regard to the, my colleague Sang will go into detail. It was basically the issue of a Swellendam versus Mossel Bay allocation. It is that the Department of Sports and Recreation gave us the wrong amount for the wrong municipality, and they picked it up quite soon after the Division of Revenue Bill. The regional one was gazetted, and the municipalities were informed. I don't know if Korisang, you want to add anything more. Then the question was asked whether we would encourage provinces and local governments to also look at Presidential Employment Initiative programs through their own provincial equitable shares and local government equitable shares. And the answer is definitely yes. And would there be guidelines? Yes, there would be guidelines, but that will not be issued by the National Treasury. The department that's leading that program is the Presidency, and they will be responsible for issuing more details and guidelines in that regard. And they're also responsible for developing a framework in terms of which the monitoring on the program will be done in terms of performance. Then Then with regard to the changes to the provincial equitable shares and the applications received from provinces, more detail was requested there. The additions made to the provincial equitable share here relate specifically to the Presidential Employment Initiative. And that is what we call, it's not run in terms of the provincial equitable share formula. It's what we refer to on a technical level as an add-on. And it's based on applications already received, and it's informed the amount that the Western Cape also received in this regard. So it is based on the applications received by the respective provinces and including the one received from the Western Cape. So those amounts are already predetermined and it's included as an add-on. So it's not run in terms of the provincial equitable share formula. Then with regard to transferring allocations to municipalities, is it done by provincial treasuries or is it done by national treasuries? It is actually done by the national transferring officer, because so you need to look at which department actually administers the grant. So if it's a grant that's administered by the Department, say, of Water and Sanitation, it will be the National Department of Water and Sanitation that will be transferring the money to the municipality concerned. Of course, there are checks and balances in place also for National Treasury and the Provincial Treasuries, because we do monitor the spending on those grants. And for example, if we pick up that there's very slow spending on the grant, we will liaise with the National Department. But in a lot of cases, when there's slow spending, the request will come directly from the National Department concerned that's responsible for administering the grant, although the National Treasury and the Provincial Treasury can also recommend to the department, for example, to withhold money if there's slow spending on the local government conditional grants. But there are grants that's administered by the National Treasury, for example, such as the Municipal Financial Management Grant and also the Neighbourhood Development Partnership Grant. Those are just giving two examples of grants where National Treasury would then directly transfer to the municipalities concerned. With regard to the local government equitable share, those monies are transferred by the Department of Cooperative Governance. But of course, if there's withholding, it can be on the instruction of the National Treasury concerned, for example, as well. Hopefully that answers that question. Then how are the reductions made to the equitable share? That is an in-year question. So in terms of the in-year reductions to the provincial equitable share, it is made in terms of the personnel numbers, because it's just linked to one aspect, and that is to do with the wage bill and the wage bill reduction. And I'll ask Jonathan Benjamin to provide more information in that regard. Then with regard to the reductions to provincial conditional grants, those are made with regard to the recovery plan for SIA. And how are those reductions made? National Treasury advised the department of the reductions that's required, because what was needed is that in the decision that was made with regard to SIA is that the fiscal framework will remain intact to fund the recovery plan of SIA. So that meant that reductions had to be made to national departments as well as provincial departments. So it was done on a proportional basis largely to determine the amount of reductions that's required from departments. What then happened with regard to the conditional grants? National Treasury indicated to the national sector departments responsible for administering the grant that these are the amounts required in terms of conditional grants. And then two decisions were made in that regard. In certain cases, national departments recommended that certain conditional grants take a larger reduction to protect, for example, certain other conditional grants that they administer. And then the reductions per province or per municipality was then determined in two ways as well. If it's project-based, it was determined by the national department that's responsible for administering the grant. So they made those decisions and informed the National Treasury of the allocations for those reductions. In terms of conditional grants, it's formula-based. Those reductions were done in terms of the formulas that's then applicable for that exercise. With regard to is there technical exercise that was followed? Like already explained that in terms of it was a national decision, a cabinet decision that the recovery program of SAA will be funded and that it will be done within the existing fiscal framework. So those were the political decisions that then informed the technical processes. If I can then ask Kolisang and Jonathan to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I'll just add with regards to the Mossel Bay and Swellendam local municipality, if the municipalities were consulted with regards to the error, and I can say that COGTA had sent through revised allocation letters to the municipalities, letting them know of the error and the revised allocation for both municipalities. Unfortunately, I do not know when the date was, but I do know that they were sent, and we can send through the letters to the committee if they would like for us to send it through. And that's about it. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy, and good morning again once to the members. I suppose I'll just basically touch on some of the reductions which some of the colleagues mentioned, and I'll focus specifically on the compensation of employees. So as the members are aware that during the 2020 budget speech, the minister has announced interventions to address the fast-growing and unsustainable wage bill. And one of those proposals was to reduce the public sector compensation bill by about 160 billion over the 2020 MTF. And according to the budget review, the public wage bill was supposed to be reduced by 37.8 billion, specifically for the current year, which is the 2021 financial year. Now, the identified 37.8 billion rand compensation of employees reductions is applicable to national, provincial, as well as national public entities. And thus, it basically essentially equates to a freeze in salary adjustments or no cost of living adjustments for the current financial year. Now, of the 37.8 billion, of course, Wendy has indicated in a presentation that provinces, the amount there is about 25 billion rand. And maybe just to, without going into too much detail, it is quite a technical exercise. So the criteria that we use there, so we basically used the inflation assumptions at the time, as well as we looked at the different parameters which are in the current wage agreement. So we've gone into quite detail. We've applied those inflation projections. We've applied the different parameters across the different levels. Of course, you know that the wage agreement, the current wage agreement as it is now, has a sliding scale. So we've applied all of that across the different levels, and basically we've came to the figure of 37.8 billion rand across all spheres. And obviously, province's share of that is the 25 billion rand. So yes, the process is quite detailed, and I suppose we have got a short narrative which basically explains how we've gone about in terms of the reductions of COE across all the spheres of government. I suppose we can make that available also to the members in the committee, and just so that the members can read up and get a better idea of the process that we followed. Yeah, let me just stop there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Wendy, is that everything?
Just a remark, because I see in the chat that maybe my one remark has been slightly, sorry for that, I phrased it very badly. The 10.5 billion rand that was the rescue plan for SAA was of course informed by technical processes The response that I then answered is how were the 10.5 billion then reduced out of the national and provincial fiscal and local government fiscal frameworks, and that's what I said is the technical process. But the allocation of that amount, of course, was determined in terms of a technical process. Thank you.
Don't worry, Wendy.
That's it from our side. Thanks.
You don't have to explain. I fully heard what you said, and I fully understood what you said, and we all know what happened. That you're absolutely right. The cabinet made a decision, and that 10.5 billion, the officials had to go and find. So you don't know if this is not with you. Don't worry. We know how that happened. I just wanted to get clarity on because I don't think I got clarity on the process. On the 10.5 billion for SAA, so when Cabinet made that political decision and called in the technical team of SAA, when you guys at SAA, the budget committee or the technical team, I think was previously led by Professor Michael Sachs, I'm not sure who's in charge of that process now. When you got that request from Cabinet or the minutes of Cabinet to say, guys, here's the political decision, please find us the 10 billion. What formula did Treasury use to determine police 1 billion, Treasury 1 billion, Western Cape for 1.5 billion, Eastern Cape? That's what I'm trying to understand to help to explain decisions. If somebody's saying, we just explain tomorrow, why is this class full? And we explained to them that there was a technical, so where is the technical formula that was done? Because I'm sure somebody at Treasury didn't just suck it up from a thumb. Somebody said, this is the formula that we're using. This is the maths basis. Can you allocate this, send this to the CFOs of national departments or the Western Cape Treasury? Where is that technical formula? Where does that sit? And can we have a copy of that technical formula that Treasury uses to determine how they make up that 10 billion? I think that's probably the answer I'm trying to understand. Or is there such a process? If there's not, it's fine. Then we know, obviously, then you write to departments and just tell them we need the savings. Or is there a technical formula that you take into account, whether it's the equitable share formula, whether it's an allocation, I don't know what you call it in Treasury, but is there such a process that you use? And is it a public process that we as the budget committee can have access to that process? Thank you.
Thank you. May I respond?
Yes, of course, yes.
Okay, with regard to, there was a technical process that was followed, and it was done by Budget Office. Basically, the first step, and that's a key decision that was taken, is that certain expenditure was protected, and that included the provincial equitable share and the local government equitable share. And the decision that informed that is basically to say that this is a national decision and it shouldn't impact on provinces and local governments. So no reductions were made to the provincial equitable share and the local government equitable share. But what is very important to know, so these allocations or these reductions were made from national allocations. But what is very important to acknowledge is that provincial conditional grants and local government conditional grants, if you look at the vertical division, it makes part of the national allocations.
Course, yeah.
And that is why provincial conditional grants and local government conditional grants were reduced. The exercise was basically done on a proportional basis and basically said we need 10.5 billion rand and we'll take it proportionally from all national departments in terms of their budget size. Those amounts were then given through to the national departments and they could then determine, we won't do it proportionally in terms of all programs, we'll take certain, so that the choice of where to place, they got an amount, the national departments got an amount, and they then made the decisions of how to attribute it between the various programs that fall within national. But one criteria that was put down as well is that the conditional grant amounts to provinces and local government could not be increased by the national departments because we wanted to avoid a situation where they then offload these reductions on provinces and local government, because in the end, provincial conditional grants and local government conditional grants benefit provinces and local government. But in that process, what then happened is that the national departments also made decisions and said, we will rather take a bigger reduction on this conditional grant and we don't want to take a reduction on that conditional grant. To give an example, the National Department of Basic Education said we want to protect the National School Nutrition Program, but we'll take a larger reduction then on the education infrastructure grant, for example. So those are the type of trade-offs that national departments made, but all national departments were given amounts, a total amount that they had to reduce. Hopefully that provides a bit more clarity. Thank you.
That does give me some direction, and thank you for that. So the National Treasury didn't have a technical team that looked at the sorry, is the point of order?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Chairperson, I had questions that I had raised in the first round, and I see now you guys are having a discussion about, your specific question, and my questions were not answered.
Okay, so your questions were not answered. Okay, we'll get back to that point now,
please.
Member Conde. Anybody else's questions that were not answers as well? Okay, just before you get to Member Conde's question, I just want to finish this point. So there was no technical team that looked at the reasons why funding for education grant must be cut or police infrastructure grant. It was just based on what you say, proportionally to each department. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, it was proportionally determined to give a specific amount to a national department, and so they had to come back and they could then themselves determine where to make those reductions, and those were submitted to National Treasury. Of course, it didn't mean that National Treasury didn't just accept it as is. They also looked at it and had discussions with the national departments concerned if necessary.
Thank you. No, fair enough.
I apologize for the question we didn't answer. I see we missed one. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you answer Member Condlo's questions, please?
The question that was posed is with regards that I don't think we answered, has got to do with money sent back to the fiscus because the spending capacity is lacking in municipalities, and what is required to be done to build the capacity, particularly of municipalities. And that is a very good question, and that we should have responded to in the first round, so apologies for that. With regard to conditional grants that go to municipalities, and the issue of capacity is a concern, and the responsibility, of course, lies with municipalities in the first instance to build their capacity. But if there's clear capacity challenges, then of course it is the responsibility of the National Sector Department to provide support to that municipalities to build their capacity as well, and to enable the municipality then to better spend on their programs. Then there's also other initiatives in place, such as the Municipal Infrastructure Agent that's administered by the National Department of Cooperative Governance, that's required to provide support to municipalities where there's slow spending as well. And then another instrument that's been introduced to assist municipalities that's got lacking capacity, and it should be as a last resort, not as a first resort. If there's continual underspending of conditional grants in a municipality, and that is attributed to lack of capacity, then the money can also be allocated as an indirect grant, where the national department then spends money on behalf of municipalities to ensure that the infrastructure is put in place. And then a very key point is also made that it's not always just because of lack of capacity that municipalities do not spend their conditional grants. It could be challenges, for example, that there's floods or there's supply chain management challenges. And that's why if there's cases where a municipality have had a commitment in place, but there were delays, but the money is already, the commitment was made in that financial year, there's provision for rollovers of conditional grants into the next financial year. I don't know, Collie, if you want to add anything to what I've just said.
Thank you, Wendy. I think you've covered it. Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. Before Member Dago, Member Kondla, does that cover you?
Chair, can I request that you also allow Provincial
Of
Treasury?
course, yeah,
and
no,
SALGA?
fair enough, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Member Nkondlo.
I was saying, Chairperson, is it possible that you can allow both SALGA and Provincial Treasury to also add, because I also requested if they can give their own input
Yes,
to the
yes.
question.
Yes, SALGA and Provincial Treasury on that particular question.
Can I come in, Chair? This is David Savage.
Yes, you can, Mr. Savage.
Thanks. Yes, I think Member Nkondlo raises a critical question. This year is a very tricky year, as we all know. I mean, there have been lockdown-related delays to particularly capital spending programs. And so, you know, I think most of our municipalities have been, I think all of our municipalities have been affected. And they are taking measures to try and catch up lockdown-related delays, as we are as a province. It's not always possible to fully catch up delays. So, you know, there's an added challenge this year that is going to that is already disrupting spending that I think we all know about. But the underlying issues of spending capacity in the municipal sphere, particularly around capital spending, I think are quite complex in the sense that. And not to suggest that Member Nkondlo was implying this, but obviously good governance is the flip side of the same coin of spending capacity. One has to have functioning systems that are compliant with the law in order to execute complex expenditure programs like capital spending programs efficiently and effectively to get the outcomes that we want. In many cases on the capital spending side, the challenges actually lie much earlier in the pipeline, in poor project preparation, over-ambitious budgeting over what can be spent in a year, and not just on the implementation challenges. They'll just reflect themselves in implementation challenges in the year in question. So there are a range of initiatives that are underway, and Wendy did talk to MISA and the work that MISA does in the municipal space. But there are allied initiatives in terms of the rollout of the local government infrastructure delivery management system to municipalities. I think that's starting with the larger municipalities with the very big capital spending programs. And I think that when it was rolled out a number of years ago in the provinces through the IDIP program, had a very positive effect at the provincial level, so it's likely to have a positive effect at the local government level as well. Although the nature of the IDMS, the Infrastructure Delivery Management System, is like somewhat different because the asset classes, the infrastructure asset classes that we're dealing with are very different. What is built at provincial level as opposed to what's built at local government level. And then finally, just to note that there are data issues that we certainly from the Provincial Treasury are aware of in how spending performance is reported, particularly in year. And this gets very technical, but it's essentially a variation between the data strings on the standard chart of accounts that are used for reporting into other spheres of government by municipalities, as opposed to the actual spending that's being done that has actually been accomplished at the local government level. So this has been an area for technical tightening up with a number of municipalities, including the City of Cape Town. And we're hoping to have resolved it from the beginning of this municipal financial year as well. Chairperson, there were a couple of other areas that I think members had asked for Provincial Treasury input on, and I don't know if you wanted me to go immediately to that or close this matter.
Can we just quickly get Mr. Swart, and then we'll get back to you, Mr. Savage. Mr. Swart?
Chairperson, yes, thank you. With your permission, can I give an opportunity to one of SALGA's officials who is directly involved with these different municipalities in terms of that issue?
That's fair, yeah.
Kosenati will speak on that.
Good day, Chairperson, and thank you, Councillor Randall, for that. My name is Ngosinati September, Senior Advisor, Municipal Finance at the SALGA Provincial Office. Chair, in response to Honorable Kondlo's request, this question was in two parts to SALGA. One, the monitoring of the grant, and secondly, by extension, the audit implications of that. The Section 71, which is the intelligence report that Provincial Treasury use, as indicated by the MFMA, but on each day, 10th day of the month, submissions are made to Provincial Treasury. We avoid duplication. However, what we do to enable the collaboration, when Treasury has done their review notes, in our provincial working group, which we convene quarterly, Municipal Finance and Fiscal Policy Working Group, Provincial Treasury representative come and present to enlighten or advise the MMCs responsible for portfolio finance on the outcomes of the Section 71. Now, in that report, it entails the performance spending on grants, and subsequent to that process, the Provincial Treasury, as per Section 19 of the Division of Revenue Act, in their discretion, they then engage the transferring officers to consider if there's non-spending or slow spending, whether the grant will be withheld, which is a process that takes 30 days for the municipality to respond to. And thereafter, if there is no satisfying response, then the grant gets to be stopped. A reallocation will take place where a municipality that seems to perform better in that particular grant, and the time it still allows them to spend more, they are then given allocation of that grant out of the one that did not spend well. In relation to the audit process, Chair, we have a program called Municipal Audit Support Program, in which we select municipalities that has regressed. If not so, in our case, it was 4 municipalities in this year. We then add with municipalities that have stubborn findings, which are your recurring findings. Our program is made up of institutional capacity, governance, financial management, and capacity building, Chair. And in that, municipalities that we're very much involved with this year, it's Canaland Municipality, Houghton Municipality, and the Central Karoo District municipalities. We then report to a session started 2 years back, arranged by the Provincial Accountant General, Aziz Hadin, and where we discuss these issues before we refer back to municipality to ensure the communication is consistent. We then separate our roles in where as SALGA will engage with the political leadership and Treasury will engage administration. We ensure that when we convene those sessions, I'll have a provincial treasury representative with me. I try to be brief, Chair, in avoiding doing say what was said before by Mr. Savage and as well as Wendy. I hope it covers Honorable Kondlo's response or other question in relation to SALGA.
Thank you very much, sir. Honorable Kondlo, is that covered?
Chair, I appreciate the response about standard procedures that are involved in curbing the problem. Well, I think my question was to ask whether this, both of these institutions can at least give us comfort that as we talk in this environment of these budget cuts, is that work yielding result? So now, I think in particular from SALGA, what I'm hearing is their standard procedure and processes on how they, they deal with their normal. So I think, Chair, perhaps it's a conversation for another day, but it's something that for me, that is worth noting, that whilst we talk about budget adjustments, because of COVID and any other thing, the reality of this particular problem that is consistent, I think, in terms of municipal spending is something that we need to be able to look at, and we must see results, improvements in as far as that is concerned. So thank you for the responses, although they're not necessarily assisting me whether there is anything at this point that's going to help us, to navigate this problem. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Kondlo. I'm going to ask Mr. Savage just to complete his input, then we go over to members. I know Member Dagmar was first, so Mr. Savage, can you continue?
Thank you, Chairperson. No, I think that there were just one or two other questions that were raised that I thought might be useful for the committee for me to respond to. The first was, I think, a critical question from Honourable Dugmore on the controls in public employment programs, particularly around risks of patronage and so forth. And just to clarify that those are addressed in the individual program designs. The EPWP, for example, has a series of controls that are built into the design, and the same is the case with the for example, the education assistants that are currently being recruited. Although that funding comes through the Equitable share mechanism, there are program design interfaces there with the Department of Basic Education that are intended to address those risks. Those risks that may materialize, such as risks of patronage and so forth. But it's a very critical question to ask and to continue to ask, particularly for the accounting officers as they roll out those programs, because those are risks that are going to be things that they have to manage on an ongoing basis. Just with regard to the question in relation to South African Airways, to clarify, Western Cape government's reductions amounted in this year, for that amounted to 86.613 million, and they were predominantly from the Departments of Agriculture, Health, Human Settlements and Cultural Affairs and Sport. On the question of consultations around the provincial equitable share adjustments, that's a detailed ongoing technical process. And varying aspects of it are always underway. I think Wendy did refer to a number of dimensions of that. There is a subcommittee of the Technical Committee on Finance that deals with this in particular. There are both the introduction of data updates that take account of population movements and so forth as they affect the formula, because that then affects allocations, and the speed at which those data updates are firstly obtained and then introduced. In other words, the effects are phased in over time is relatively carefully managed. There are also longer-term processes that deal with revisions to the formula, the data elements and the weightings and so forth. That is subject to an ongoing process as well. Obviously, there are underlying pressures that these processes are attempting to address, particularly the demographic shifts that are occurring in population between provinces, and there's a big unknown at the moment with the current scale of the economic downturn as the extent to which there would be an acceleration of urbanization trends. In other words, an acceleration of the general trend of movement from more rural to more urban provinces as households try and accommodate these sharp economic shocks that they've been that they've experienced, that we've all experienced. There is, Chairperson, a very specific technical issue on compensation of employment and the reductions associated with that for the province that I think it would be appropriate to bring the committee's attention to, so they can fully understand the dimensions of that. And as the Provincial Treasury, to assist in that regard, we do have a short presentation to try and make it as visible as possible. This relates to the 2.396 billion rand reduction in the provincial equitable share in this year. That was on one of the first slides that the National Treasury had put up. I'm not sure if this is the right time for us to do that, but I would like to ask the committee if we could have an opportunity just to focus their attention on that issue in particular.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. We are going through to do that just later on. Let's just finish this round first. I'm going to recognize the next round of hands on this particular topic. I saw Member Member Dagmar was first, then Member Derek America.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, sorry, just to thank the National Treasury for responding, to give us a sense and of the fact that it's very clear that in this Second Amendment bill, there is clearly the deduction that we're seeing there in regard to the remuneration of employees, and then, you know, which is about 1.5, and then you've indicated, you know, that what's added is 771. So you essentially, in terms of this particular adjustment, are probably looking at an overall cut of about 700, which seems to be consistent with the reductions that have been, you know, received by, or, you know, indicated to other provinces. But I just want to also clarify something. The statement which I put up on the chat group actually referred to the Premier's comment about a likely 10 billion cut over the MTEF. So I just want to clarify that, you know, I wasn't saying, I didn't mean to say, and I shouldn't have said that the Premier was saying that there would be a 10 billion cut in this particular adjustment. But could you respond to the issue of whether it's correct or not that over the MTEF period, in terms of current projections, and obviously you've had to do a lot of adjustment in regard to the financial situation that the country does face, but in terms of our equitable share allocation, is it likely, as the Premier has said, that over the MTEF period, our Western Cape budget will be cut by 10 billion? I think it's important because these statements tend to create panic. If they're true, then we need to deal with it. If they're not true,
can I just
be
ask
useful
you
to
a favor,
clarify. Now, I'm still on the floor, Chair.
No, Member Dagmar, I'm calling you to order, so we always have that respect. That we don't try and draw officials into that political angles. That's why earlier on when I asked the question, I said clear to the official that my question I leave to the politician and I asked a technical question. The statement you're referring to is open to different interpretations, and it's unfair to ask the official to give a particular view on that.
No.
Chairperson, we don't have the
Chair,
MC
Chair, you are
finance
being-
in this meeting. Yeah. Sorry, Member Nkondlo.
Nkondlo, I'm
No,
addressing
I'm
Member Dagmar,
saying,
please. I'm addressing Member Dagmar, and he needs to respond to my comments. So you can't call a point of order while I call a point of order on a matter. Member Dagmar, what are you saying?
Okay. Chairperson, there is no MEC for finance in this meeting. You don't have the detail as the chair, with all due respect. Who else do we ask other than the National Treasury official? So let's just leave aside what the Premier said. My question is the following. Is it correct to say that the Western Cape budget, and this is what I'm asking, leave aside whatever the Premier said, that the Western Cape budget over the MTEF is likely to be cut by 10 billion? That's my question. The other question which wasn't responded to was whether the Provincial or National Treasury, in terms of the President's public employment initiatives, is there no discussion, particularly at a local government level, and maybe the SALGA colleagues could give us a sense. We know that things are tight at a local level, but as we move towards July, when the local governments will be looking at their own budgets, clearly any public employment initiatives will put more money into the local economy. It will be a temporary relief, as we've attempted. Is SALGA or the different municipalities of our province looking at using own revenue as a possible way of having, let's call them local employment, public employment initiatives? Because there are choices to be made at a time like this where our communities across the province are suffering. One can obviously look at the infrastructure needs which need to be spent, and some of that does obviously create employment. But if there's a dire social need now affecting residents of a municipality, surely our local sphere should also be looking at local employment initiatives. That was what I wanted to ask.
Okay, Member Nkondlo, you had a point of order you wanted to raise?
Can I ask my follow-up question, Chair?
No, unless it's the member America's hand was first, so he's first. If you don't have a point of order,
I have raised my hand. Hopefully, you've noted it too.
There is first, Member America. Member America, are you there? Okay, no feedback, Member America. Member Nkondlo?
Yeah, sorry, I'm here.
Okay, Member America. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, it is true that the reduction in the second adjustment budget is 1.5 billion rand. And I think Mr. Savage indicated to the end of his sort of response that he would clarify the 2.4 billion rand reduction of freeze in the wage bill. That will provide more clarity on that. because to me, there is no adequate explanation as to what that represents and the total change of 1.5 billion rand, because I look at the Presidential Employment Initiative and the food relief. Now, I don't know whether that is new money that's been created, because from the presentation, it doesn't give an indication that it's new money. It is existing money that's already allocated to the province that is reallocated in two different categories and ring-fence in those particular categories. And perhaps, Mr. Savage's presentation on the public wage bill will provide more clarity to understand those created new categories that is ring-fenced specifically for food relief and the presidential employment flowing from the freeze on the public wage bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member Nkondlo.
Thank you. I want to check because I didn't hear, I think in the initial round, the response around the specifics on those grants where I was asking which municipalities are affected and their implications to service delivery, if that information is available or is information that could be shared at a later stage. The second one is a new question. I just want to confirm, according to slide 12, that in the final analysis in terms of this adjustment, that there is 1.4, almost 1.5 budget downwards in this second adjustment, with an addition of 1 billion as per what is in slide 12 in terms of the provincial allocation. Am I understanding this right? And secondly, in terms of the municipal allocation, the adjustment downwards is about 80.5 million. Is that, I think, in the final analysis, so that we don't interpret these numbers incorrectly, if that can just be confirmed by National Treasury. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Treasury, if you can just respond.
Thank you. With regard to the reduction for COE, it is 1.5 for the Western Cape. And then the follow-up question is, what is the reduction over the MTF in terms of personnel or COE reduction? There's two types of reductions over the 2021 MTF. And we've already allocated allocation letters to the provincial treasuries. So they do have the information available. And then the question is asked, what are those amounts? There's two types of COE reductions that will take place over the 2021 MTF. The one is the wage freeze that was announced in the 2020 MTF. That will be applied over 3 years. And then there's also the further reduction for the compensation or the fiscal consolidation COE reduction, because what the reality unfortunately is, we've got a government employee workforce that's too large for the current fiscus to carry with the current economic activity that we have in the country. So it means that the burden that the COE places on the fiscus is just too large for the fiscus to accommodate, and we cannot continue with the debt spiral that we're currently busy with. So one of the key reforms, and it's definitely not the only reform, but one of the key reforms that we do need is to right-size government in terms of what the fiscus can afford. So in terms of those amounts, I can share them so long, because the compensation of employees' wage freeze reductions amount to 8 billion over the MTF, and then the fiscal consolidation COE reductions amount to 10 billion over the MTF. So that amount is indeed correctly stated, so that over the MTF there would be a fiscal consolidation wage reduction of 10 billion over the MTF. Then with regard to the importance of municipalities also playing a role with regard to the presidential employment initiative, or just employment initiatives more broadly, is quite important. And it's important point that made that municipalities should look at their own resources as well to see how they can do existing service delivery in a more job efficient, or looking at community-based programs that will definitely make a difference. For example, one key reform that we introduced in the COVID or the June budget was to make an adjustment to the municipal infrastructure grant to allow for the spending on maintenance, and that is definitely a very good way also to create job employment. And then in the COVID-19 adjustments budget, also 11 billion was added to the local government equitable share, and municipalities can also look at part of those monies to direct towards employment creation initiatives. Then with regard to the issue is that there's three types of changes or amendments made to the provincial equitable share in the 2020-21 adjustment second round. And the one is for COE, and then there's for food relief, and there's also for the presidential employment program that's directed towards education. With regard to the food relief allocation, that is not redirected money that's currently in the provincial fiscal framework. That is additional money. With regard to the presidential employment program money, that is not redirected money also. That is additional money. And with regard to the COE, that is an actual reduction to the existing provincial fiscal framework. Then the question was asked, how does the reductions impact on specific municipalities? That information is contained in the Division of Revenue Second Amendment Bill, where the reduction is indicated per municipality, per grant, and we can make that information available if it's not yet available to the committee, but it definitely indicates the amount per reduction per municipality. And it will have varying impacts on the different municipalities. In cases where there's underspending on conditional grants, it will have a lesser impact than in cases where there's good spending on conditional grants, where the municipalities will be required to then scale down or slow down on the projects concerned. Then with regard to slide 12, Korisang, if you can just put that slide on.
I've put it up. Is it visible?
Yes, it is correct to read that the first indicates, the first column shows you the additions to conditional grants, and then that is the SIA recovery adjustment, and then the additions, the column next to it then indicates the additions, and that's generally linked to the presidential employment program. And then if you then add the two together, you will get the difference between the two. So in certain cases, you would see additions and reductions, and you will even see additions and reductions to a similar grant or the same grant, which will then be netted out. That is, thank you. I don't know, Korisang or Jonathan, if you want to add anything.
Thank you, Wendy. I just wanted to add that the same rationale applies to the local government allocations. Honorable Gondwe had asked for both spheres. Just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you very much. I see this was a one hand still up. Is that the questions that you covered for everyone?
Chair, yeah, my hand's up.
Okay, you can continue.
Can I continue, Chair?
Yes, you may.
Thank you very much. Chair, I'm sitting with the copy of the budget estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure for 2020. And in terms of 2020, 2021, in terms of transfer for receipts from national, we have an amount of 68 billion, and 398 million, and then we have the equitable share is 55 billion. Then that is projected in this estimate to go 2021 to be a total in terms of receipts of 72 billion, and then 2022 77 billion. So I'd like to ask the national and obviously the provincial treasury as well, as things stand now, because the National Treasury now indicated, the MTEF, could we actually have the actual figure that is now projected for 2021-22 in terms of transfer receipts from national that was projected at 72 billion for 2021 and was projected at 77 billion? Can we actually have those specific figures as they are projected now?
Before all the colleagues respond, is there the last question? We're not going to take another round. Anybody else? Okay, my last question for Treasury just be just wanted to avoid that I would walk away misunderstanding to Mrs. Wendy and a team. When you went to the departments for the 10 billion and you already gave a clear indication, obviously we know how the decision was made. And one of the questions I did ask, was there a desktop study done by Treasury and it doesn't on the money coming from the departments, or was there physical inspection? I gather there was not. And I just wanted to get clarity on the last point. My last point is on that budget cuts that made up the ultimate 10 billion. Was that solely left up to the departments, so police, health, education? Or did Treasury have some input in saying, listen here, based on our equitable share formula that we normally work with, the Western Cape's going to get additional learners, Gauteng is going to get double additional learners, Eastern Cape are losing learners to other provinces. Why don't you rather cut their infrastructure, grants, etc.? Did that discussion take place or not? Thank you.
Thank you. With regard to the first question, there's two aspects to that question, and the first is what are the current projected amounts for 2021 as it relates to the provincial equitable share? And then the second question is what are the allocations in terms of provincial conditional grants as it relates to the 2021 MTF? And with regard to the 2021 MTF provincial equitable share allocations, like I've indicated earlier on, we've already shared it with the provincial treasuries, and I've already quoted some of those amounts as well, because we have sent after the medium-term budget policy statement, allocation letters on the provincial equitable shares were circulated to the provincial treasuries. With regard to the provincial conditional grants, those amounts are not yet known because what first needs to happen is that the provincial conditional grant amounts need to be determined. And after those amounts are determined and those are still being developed and still in process, then after that has been concluded, then the allocations per province and per municipality is then determined in that process, and those processes are not concluded before December. So unfortunately, that information is not yet available on how provincial conditional grants will be impacted and what the implications for the Western Cape will be. But that information on the provincial equitable share is available. And I don't know if we could ask the Provincial Treasury to share it or whether we should share it. Then with regard to the 10 billion exercise, and was it solely left to the national departments? That's a question that public finance can also deal with in National Treasury, because they're the ones that looked at the national departments. So they would have looked at, for example, the Department of Defense. Like I indicated earlier on, Defense would have gotten, this is the amount that you need to reduce your budget by, and they would then have determined where to place those reductions. And of course, the public finance officials in National Treasury would have interacted with the national department concerned. Then the same applied with regard to conditional grants. The departments, the national departments were required to do those reductions, but we did look at those allocations when we received it. And if allocations looked a bit strange, we did ask the national departments to provide us with explanations on why those allocations did not fit the normal profile. Hopefully that assists. I don't know, Korisang, if you want to add anything more.
No, Wendy, I think that covers it. Thanks.
Chair, could I just ask as a follow-up, just to get final clarity on this issue?
Remember, Dagmar, we're really pushing, but we're going to give you last chance because we did say closing questions.
Yeah, I think then we must direct this question to the head of Treasury, Mr. Savage. In the budget book, and specifically then distinguishing between equitable share and conditional, there's an amount of 55 billion for 2021. I would like to know what is the allocation given to the Provincial Treasury just for the equitable share for 2021-22. Currently in the budget book, it stands at 59 billion. And what is the allocation indication they've been given for 2022-23? Currently, it stands at 63 billion. So I'm looking to those two figures, 2021-2022 equitable share. The national has indicated to us now, they've given those figures. Could the Provincial Treasury tell us what those figures are?
Thank you. Before Mr. Savage responds, I just want to, for National Treasury, if that answered all, did you answer all the questions?
I hope so. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Savage, can you, in your response, also just finish your earlier presentation that you needed to do?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Honourable Dugmore's questions around the adjustments to the equitable share allocations. I mean, there have been, I don't have the data with me right now. I mean, I can get it, but just to clarify that we're tabling the second adjustments budget and the medium-term budget policy statement on Thursday in the House. And so all of this information, that's when we kind of formally table all of this information for the members to debate. I didn't bring the numbers with me to this meeting, but I can ask one of my colleagues to find them. They are part of the national medium-term budget policy statement. What I can say is, of course, there have been, as Wendy has indicated, significant downward revisions to these numbers, really driven by the shifts in the approach to compensation. So before we dive into that issue, in fact, one of my colleagues is just indicating to me now, the revisions for 21-22 and 22-23 are down to 53.4 billion and 54.7 billion in the case of our equitable share allocation. But all of the details of this will be tabled on Thursday. So I hope that is sufficient for the committee at this point. Can I just pause there before I dive into the dynamics behind those reductions?
Thank you, Chair. No, thank you for that. I understand that there will be a
hang on a second, sorry.
Chairperson, you wanted to this is not your meeting. This is our meeting.
Yes, but you can't just interrupt
me
like that. Don't be rude.
I'm trying to get an issue clarified because there's a statement.
Interrupt like this. You can't do this. It's not okay.
No. Chairperson, I thought the head of Treasury indicated was asking if there was any.
Member Dagmo, can you hang on, please? I'm just trying to speak to Mr. Savage here. I mean, you cannot do that. Mr. Savage, are you done, sir?
Chairperson, I would like to also just brief the committee on the question of the compensation-related reductions in a little bit more detail.
Is that the point you're trying to make earlier on?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, just for clarity, is that going to be part of your public submissions as well, or is that a separate point?
Excuse me?
Is that going to be part of your public submissions as well, or is this separate?
This is the present. I think it's just a presentation that we wanted to make in order to advise the committee on the dynamics and the risks associated with the compensation reduction. So they understood the issue, because it's by far the most significant issue, particularly for the adjustments in this year.
Okay. I just got to be clarity on that. We're going to get to that now. Member Dagmo?
Sorry, Chair, you see, let me just try and ask you and the committee just to try and bear with me here. We've now the National Treasury has indicated that over the MTF in regard to compensation, there is an issue of 10 billion. But the issue is this: if you look at the equitable share that this province received in 2021, it's 55. Mr. Savage has now indicated that his colleague informed him that for 21-22, that figure would drop to 53 billion, which is a 2 billion difference, and that would drop to 54 billion. So when one is indicating that there's a reduction, that is the issue that I'm looking at, because it was projected to be 63 billion in 2022. But maybe what would be good for us is to get the presentation, because the key issue that we're looking at in regard to the equitable share indications given is to try and work out what the actual budget cut is over the 2 outer years. That's what I'm getting to. And in terms of the response from Member Savage, for a drop from 55 to in the outer year to 54, is obviously less than the projected, but it's not a 10 billion rand reduction. That's what we want clarity on.
Members, can I just perhaps try and just give some guidance? On Thursday, there is a second adjustment. There's a budget on Thursday in Parliament where we all are going to get the blue book and we all are going to get on the process forward. I think we all are aware on this. We are currently busy with the second adjustment process. I just want us to be, and I think that's the point Mr. Savage wanted to make earlier, Member Dagmo. So we sort of put them in a corner to ask questions related to a presentation that has been formally tabled to Parliament on Thursday coming. I just want all of us just to be on the same page.
Thank you.
Okay. Members, we conclude that process, and thank you to our colleagues at National Treasury. And we really appreciate that you always take time to come to this committee. Mr. Savage, are you going to need National Treasury present for your presentation?
Very happy to, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, we obviously are opening up the process now for public comment, and Provincial Treasury did indicate that they would like to make a public submission, and anyone, members of the public, are welcome to do so. So, Mr. Savage, I hand over to you and your team.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and to members of the committee. We just thought it appropriate to outline some of the dynamics that are behind the very significant reductions for compensation, both particularly for this year, that are associated with the second adjustments budget, just so that members are able to understand the numbers as they appear a little bit more clearly, and the risks that raises for the province, which are relatively significant. We will, of course, be tabling the medium-term budget policy statement and the second adjusted estimates of expenditure for this financial year before the House on Thursday. But with your permission, I think it would be valuable as a technical input to this discussion to just better understand the compensation dynamics in the budget. And there are really two critical issues here. The first is around the basis for the calculation of the reductions for this financial year, and the second is the certainty of achieving the actual formal reduction in expenditure. In other words, the need to pay over compensation to employees, both of which raise risks for the province. So I'm going to ask my colleague, Dr. Haverman, to just put up a little bit of the data and talk through the issues that we think are appropriate for the committee to note in understanding it. And as I said, it's by far the most significant issue that's associated with the Division of Revenue Adjustments bill that's currently before the committee. So I'll hand over to Dr. Haverman now.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Savage. I'm just having a bit of a technical issue with putting the slides up. I wonder if you could put them up from your side, if I could send you.
I will do so. If you can just confirm that you can see that.
Yes, I can. I presume everybody can as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Haverman.
Thank you very much. So as Mr. Savage said, the issue really relates to, on the first slide, the reduction in compensation, which has been included in my colleague's submission relating to the 2.4 billion, which comes off the provincial equitable share. This is a very significant amount, and so we've been doing quite a lot of research and work at the Provincial Treasury to understand exactly how this amount was calculated, firstly, and secondly, how this amount will be applied to the individual votes when we table the our M2BS on Thursday. And so I think this is an opportunity to also just brief the committee in advance so that we kind of get the technical issues dealt with, but also to highlight some of the concerns we have with the calculation. So, I mean, I think we strongly support the strategy that National Treasury is rolling out. Just on the left-hand side, what that shows you, Chair, is that compensation spending in nominal terms has been rising significantly since 2015-16, and payments for capital assets, which is basically investment spending, has stayed flat in nominal terms. And on the right-hand side, if you look at it in real terms, you'll see that compensation spending has been rising in real terms, but this investment spending measure, it's not a perfect measure of investment spending, but it's still quite an important one, has declined and is now 10% less a year in real terms than in 2015-16. So what that basically says is that we are spending less and less on investment and more on compensation. And so we as a province strongly support a strategy to deal with this. I think what really is the thing that we are engaging with National Treasury on is the technicalities about how we achieve this change. So just to make the point, Chair, that the Western Cape has been dealing with the compensation challenge essentially by keeping the number of employees as efficient as possible. So the size of the government is relatively small. We have a lower headcount per citizen in terms of employees per 1,000 residents, and that's because we have managed to focus our resources on frontline employees, that's doctors, nurses, and teachers, and not allowing the other parts of the provincial government to grow. But that's very important because going forward, as terms from a strategic perspective, that's obviously what we want to keep on doing, which is what we want to maintain the number of doctors, nurses, and teachers. But we don't want to raise, or we don't want the pay of employees to sort of go out of kilter with other costs, because basically cost of employment is that. So I think the big issue for us is, and even these numbers are subject to adjustment, and this is the technical engagement that we are currently having with the National Treasury, is that we are unclear exactly on the methodology that they have used for calculating the wage adjustment. The difference between the two calculations, between the Provincial Treasury calculation and the National Treasury calculation, is about 538.7 million. In practice, what that means is that we will be having to find other places to cut that 538.7 million. So we'll have to reduce the in-year adjusted budgets for all the votes by 538.7 million to make sure that we balance back to the provincial equitable share calculation. Essentially, we estimate a wage bill in the order of about 37.7 billion. They estimate a wage bill in the order of about 37.2 billion. There is a lot of calculations that we have to do to work out between the two of us. We are a little disappointed that we are going through this process in between the national M2PS and the provincial M2PS, because we would hope to have had this sorted out by the time we received our allocation letters just after the national M2PS. This also is quite important because it has carry-through effects in terms of what will happen to compensation going forward. Then the second technical issue that we need to resolve is, as the HOD said, is what happens if the wage freeze doesn't materialize. So what happens if the court case is lost is a big concern for us. We have not yet had guidance from National Treasury on what would the effect be. There might be a settlement between national government and the unions. If there is a settlement, for example, then the provincial governments will have to pay out the settlement to their staff. We are not sure where we'll find the money to pay out the settlement to our staff. And so we are also engaging with the National Treasury just to bring the provincial parliament up to speed on this, because I think it's quite an important issue that affects the potential financial system, particularly for the province, that, what happens? Will we have to find this money? We're not sure exactly how it will happen. So that's a technical issue which we are also engaging with the National Treasury to resolve. We have, as we said, engaged quite extensively on the calculations. There are technical committees happening. There is also issues around the management of the contingent liability. The provincial minister has written twice to the national minister asking for a meeting. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, these meetings have been postponed. And so we will be requesting formally some clarity on the 538, or at least to understand how this 538 has arisen. It may be a calculation issue on our side. It may be a calculation issue on the National Treasury side. And then we will be requesting a written commitment from the national government for what would arise if there is a settlement or if the court case is lost. So all we just really would like the committee to note is that there is a discrepancy between the national numbers and the provincial numbers, that there is a potential unfunded liability which we need guidance on, and thirdly, that we are urgently engaging at a ministerial level between the provincial and national governments. Thank you very much, Chair and HOD.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the feedback. Much appreciated for the presentation. Certainly food for thought. And it's 23 minutes. So it's 23rd to day 10, almost 11. And we've been shared with the information. May I ask for National Treasury, is there any input before I get Member Dagmo's hand?
Can I ask Jonathan Benjamin to come in here, and then I'll add if necessary. Thanks.
Thank you. National Treasury.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson, and thank you again for the presentation. We really do appreciate it. Maybe just one request on my side, if it's possible, if we can get that presentation, and then obviously we can just have a look at some of the implications. So I think I have seen your numbers before, and I think also we've also shared our calculations, and without getting into too much detail, I suppose it is a bit of a technical issue. So you will recall, obviously, at the time when we determined the 37.8 billion or the 160 billion rand, it was announced by the minister. I think it was still part of the 2019 MTBPS process. So it comes a long way, and unfortunately, it's only been implemented now during the adjusted budgets. So obviously, and as I've mentioned, there's the inflation adjustments were taken into account in the calculation of some of these. So just on a technical level, maybe I suspect it could be as a result of some of those technical issues with regards to inflation. And also at the time of the 37.8 billion, I think provinces had not yet tabled their budgets at that time. So I think the best estimate at that time was based on the adjusted estimate at that point in time. And obviously, I think at the end of the 2019 and 20 financial year, provinces have actually underspent on their COE budget. So some of those technical issues might probably explain some of those variances there. But just with regards to some of the direction with regards to if the state loses the case, I think at this point in time, we make the assumption that based on the cuts that we will be winning the court case. So obviously those are the assumptions that we are using. So of course, if the state does not win the case, then of course I don't think it's just a COE problem alone. And of course, what it essentially means is that we are going to go back to the table, and we're going to probably have to revise the entire fiscal framework, because obviously you know that COE does form a big part of the consolidation, and obviously then we're going to have to change our direction totally, because what it essentially means is that we now have to sort of either borrow or find the money somewhere to fund if the state loses the court case. Let me just stop there. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Benjamin, for that. Wendy, Mrs. Wendy, want to give any input on that?
Maybe what's just important to highlight is that the point that Jonathan made, that when these amounts were calculated, it was based on the staffing employment as at 2019 and not as at 2020, and it's applicable for everyone. So the same formula was applied for everyone, be it national departments, be it provinces. So it's consistently applied for 2019. And we are aware of the fact that in 2020, provincial departments, or some provincial departments, did employ additional staff, and that will explain the discrepancy. But I think what is also quite important is the point that was made by the Western Cape Provincial Treasury. There are still discussions ongoing between ourselves to look at these technical differences and to see how we take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, members. I did see member Dagmo's hands are up, but I obviously would like to, as the teams indicated, they are busy in resolving this matter, and I think we all want them to resolve it speedily and quickly. But I will give to, if members have any matters on this. Is there any hands on this?
Thank you,
Member Kondlo. Also, Member Dagmo, then Kondlo.
Yeah, just very briefly, I just wanted to thank the Provincial Treasury for that presentation. I just want to firstly ask whether there's an indication as to when there may be judgment on this matter. I mean, it's obviously very difficult to, predict what happens and possible appeals, win or lose, but when is the judgment expected? And then if we could just get an explanation of when we talk about a wage freeze, essentially is the matter around freezing any, is it 0% increases? Is it a freeze on any additional employments by the public service? Could we just get a definition of the wage freeze? Is it a 0% increase, or is it something different to that?
Thank you, Member Nkondlo. Member Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for both the presentations, and I think at least it's comforting that there is conversation between both treasuries to try and resolve this particular discrepancy, so that at least there is clarity of its source, if it's something that could be resolved or it's something bigger. Hopefully, we will be kept abreast of that resolution on that matter. My just a question, Chair, in addition to what Member Dagmo was asking about the definition of the wage freeze, is just to understand from the province's side point of view, what has been the conversations and the also the views of the labor, in particular, I mean the employees, through their, whether individually or through their forums in the engagement. What are their views on this particular matter? Because it affects people, especially if you talk about wage freeze, and I'm hoping that can be indicated, the period being negotiated of such a wage freeze, given the realities, of the economic environment that we're sitting with, the cost of living for everybody, including, the employees. So I'm just wanting to understand that particular aspect of the attitude, and if there are any particular salient differences, or differences, areas of disagreement with the workers. What are those issues, and what are the kind of alternatives that are being put in place in those particular conversations? Thank you.
I think I don't see any hands. I'll just take the last members for the indulgence of our officials. I'm not going to take follow-up questions on these matters. So I'll ask Provincial Treasury, National Treasury, then we close on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the questions. Yes, I mean, I think that, this is a complicated, often technical issue, and I'm heartened by the attention of the committee to it. I mean, I think that the facts of the matter do matter. The court date, Honourable Dugmore, is, I believe, the 2nd of December, which is next Wednesday. Is when it is scheduled to be heard. And so we are all wait with somewhat bated breath on that matter, and there may be movement even before then. I'm not sure. And it really gets to the heart of the question that Honourable Nkondlo asked around discussions with Labour. Of course, the province, led by the DG of the province, is in regular contact and in discussion with Labour unions. This matter itself is subject to the legal action. The complexity of the issue here is that the negotiations are actually conducted at national government level. So the province has very limited participation and insight into these negotiations. So, our concern is that we bear the downside risk here and are left with the contingent liability, and we're not sure how we're going to handle it because we don't effectively have a significant seat at the table. But we, of course, do try and maintain very productive labour relations in the province, both at departmental level and at a corporate level. The question that Honourable Dugmore asks around what is the definition of a freeze is very prescient. and I'm going to ask, because you've in fact unlocked another level of complexity in that question that runs to the heart of what we're trying to work with National Treasury on. And I'm going to ask Dr. Haverman just to talk through very briefly, please, some of the complexity in the definition of what constitutes a freeze, bearing in mind that the current legal action is based on the 2018 wage agreement, okay, and not over the MTEF, which is 21-22 onwards. That is around negotiations over a new wage agreement. So the definition as it pertains to the 2018 wage agreement then becomes very important. What did those matters discuss? And there has been quite a lot of thinking of that and this is where we're looking for additional guidance from National Treasury, because it's the heart of what one calculates, how one calculates the freeze in inverted commas. But Dr. Haverman, do you want to just talk in a little bit more detail to that question, because there are a number of dimensions to it?
Thank you very much, Head of Treasury. Yes, I mean, it's completely correct that it is a very good question, because there are obviously different components of a person's pay package. There is the just your normal wage, then there is a performance component, which is called pay progression, and then there are various benefits. The most important one for this conversation is medical benefits. And so what has been happening in the province is that we have obviously frozen, in line with the guidance given by Minister Mboweni in February. We have frozen the cost of living adjustment, but it's not possible to freeze the medical benefit component because we pay on behalf of our employees. We pay their contribution to their medical aids. And that obviously follows a slightly different process, and so payments for medical aids, have been paid, and it is a liability that, in terms of the employment contract, it's really just because of the way, you have a total cost of employment package. We just pay your portion of medical aid on your behalf, and that has gone up, and we have obviously paid the increase. We're not sure, actually, to be perfectly honest, what the national guidance is on how we should treat those sorts of changes in costs. And this is part of the discussion on the discrepancy in the calculation between the two treasuries, is who should bear the cost of that, and how should it be borne. And then also the question of the number of employees freeze. So as Ms. Fano said, some provincial governments have increased the number of employees. In some cases that has been COVID related, because obviously there has been an increase in the number of health workers in certain provinces. And also we've had to roll out quite significant interventions, for example, the hospitals and so forth. And so there have been an increase in the number of engineers and so forth. And so there have been increases in employees, but our understanding was that that was not part of the guidance on budget day, was a freeze of numbers, but only a wage freeze. So our understanding was that actually the cost of living adjustment was the freeze. So I think the question is very, very good, because it does highlight actually the fact that we need to go down and sit down and understand exactly what parts of the wage of the announcement in February, what does that exactly mean, and how should we exactly apply it at provincial level. I mean, I think it's quite important considering the fact that we employ over 80,000 people in the province. And so, as a very large employer, these numbers can become quite big and move around quite a lot.
Thank you for that. Mr. Savage, anything else?
No, that's it from our side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Fano. You and your team?
Jonathan, can you just come in with regard to what the definition of a wage freeze meant, and then I'll add if necessary.
Okay, yes, thank you, Wendy, and thank you again to David and his team. I think, David, you covered most of what I wanted to say. So I suppose even just with regards to the court date, which is the 2nd of December, we are also anxiously waiting ourselves. And of course, after that, we should have better clarity and direction in terms of the COE budgets. But just with regards to the wage freeze, so, and I think Mr. Roy has rightly pointed out, there are different components in the compensation of employees. So we've also got a compensation of employees technical guidelines. So if you read that guidelines, and it is available on the National Treasury website, if you see the guidelines, you will notice that a wage freeze basically constitutes a 0% cost of living adjustment. But obviously you would have your other items such as your housing allowance, your medical allowances. Those are different components and are also negotiated separately. So even if you see in terms of our guidelines, you would notice that we've estimated that although we predict a 0% cost of living adjustment, that medical allowances and our housing allowances will still increase in line with inflation. So it's rightly so, as it was pointed out before, a wage freeze basically constitutes a 0% cost of living adjustment. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Ms. Fano?
No, I think we covered. Thank you.
Chair, would you mind if I just asked one question? I don't know if we still have time.
Unfortunately, not, Member Dugman. We need to be mindful the officials has been with us for an extremely long time because we need to finish our work as well. And I did say before the time, so I do apologize that they've been far than gracious. And I know National Treasury is due at other provinces as well, and they're already running late. They're in my WhatsApps already. Thank you to our colleagues from Provincial Treasury. And for National Treasury, thank you for coming to this committee as always and being very honest with your answers. We really do appreciate it. And I know there are 8 other legislatures that you still need to address. Thank you for Provincial Treasury as well, and always giving us fair and honest answers. We'll all save the date, members, you as well, the 2nd of December. It has severe implications for not only the Western Cape, but the rest of the country. So thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Treasury and Provincial Treasury and National Treasury. You are now excused. Members, I'm going to ask us just to take a few minutes break, maybe 15 minutes, and then we are going to come back and just do our recommendations and resolutions on what we need to give our colleagues at the NCOP on our mandates. So please do not log off, mute yourself. It's now 11:27. Let's be fair, 20 minutes. We'll reconvene at 11:47, make 11:50, 10 to 12. We'll reconvene at 10 to 12 to finalize our input into the NCOP. Thank you very much, and thanks again, Treasury, and you are now excused.
Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, Chair. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
Chairperson, it looks like you are sharing your screen.
Now, member, can you see? Member Ellen?
It's all good now.
Oh, okay, I was just minimizing. Okay, cool.
Cool.
Unknown caller.
Hello? 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 Hello?
back now and reconvene. The meeting as agreed earlier on is now 10 to 12. I just want to confirm if I have everyone on the line. Member Wenger, I heard your voice. Member Allen.
Good afternoon, Chair. Derek.
Member America, can you hear your voice? Member Dagmore.
Chair, can you hear me?
I can hear Member Dagmore's here. Member Nkondlo.
Just Chair, just before you proceed, what's strange, and I must ask IT to help, is my mic now indicates muted, but apparently you can hear me.
Yeah.
I hope you didn't hear too many secrets. Yeah.
Well, I just came back from a cup of tea, so I wasn't here. So I'm not sure who was here. So Member Nkondlo's here. Members Maseko, I see he's still here. Member Vimbi.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, I see there's a hand up. Member Wenger.
Philander as well, Chair.
Chair, perhaps we could help Honourable Dugmore. He seems to be connected with two devices.
Oh.
So it might be that the other device is not muted.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'll sort it out with IT afterwards. My apologies. I don't know. I'm having an issue with only connected with the laptop. That is a problem.
The
Okay.
NCOP in Jadu is also here, Chair.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Okay, we seem to have Zoelisa, you. Wasima, are you here? Wasima?
I'm here, Chair.
Okay, Wasima's here. Everybody else is here. Members, we can continue with our meeting.
I'm just an observer, Chair.
But you are here, and that's more important, colleague. Thank you very much. We're going to continue with the second division revenue amendment bill. Members, I just want to give some indication just what we, in terms of our process that we followed. We have called for submissions on the second division of revenue amendment bill. The submissions were done in the Argus, De Burger, and Vukani, and also the public outreach and education section also sent us to various stakeholders. We did receive input earlier on from the Treasury on this matter. And I have to say, members, though, the process that led us here, sorry, Member Wenger, you wanted to say anything? Or was this just your mic?
Sorry, no.
Okay. Just unfortunately, the timelines that got us here to today has not been very conducive. Remember, Dagmar, one of your TVs just went on, your screens. Can you just mute the other one as well, because there are two of you?
Sorry, Chair. I'm really not sure what's happening here.
If you just mute one of yourself, that's fine. Okay, members, we're going to continue. Like I said, there were the timelines from the NCOP were unfortunately extremely short notice. And that is the reason we are here today. And we're going to have to be back here again in a couple of days to give our final negotiation mandate. But before we continue with that, I'm going to ask members, in terms of drafting the negotiation mandate, is there any input from members of the committee that you'd like to give in so we can, that form part of our negotiating mandate, whether you agree, object, you've got any comments that you want to put into this particular bill? I saw a hand goes up, Member Wenger.
Chair, thank you very much. Before we get to the actual nuts and bolts of the bill itself, I think that it would be prudent of this committee to raise objections about the very short timeline. Yeah. Usually with a money bill, we get about 2 weeks as a timeline. And on this occasion, we've been given 48 hours. And I think with a bill as significant as this, which has such large decreases in provincial budgets, which will no doubt affect the operations of the province, I think that we do need to have enough time to be able to do adequate public participation. And I don't think that the 48 hours allows us to do so. The fact that we'd have to advertise the bill even before it's being referred and so on. And I think that as an opening, as a committee, we should state that the timeline is too short for us to fulfill our constitutional mandate of adequate public participation, please.
Thank you, Member Wenger. I agree with you as well. The timeline was extremely short, and we definitely will need to inform the NCOP about how we feel about it. So I concur with that. Is it, Member Ellen, is it also on the timeline or on the inputs on the bill?
Thank you, Chairperson. I would want to affirm the comments made by our Chief Whip as well in this regard, for that to be noted. But I wanted to double check with you. I have submitted comments via email to you and to the procedural officer. It's quite a lengthy document that I sent. I wanted you to give guidance. Should you want me to read parts of it, or how would you want me to proceed in that regard? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give guidance now. Member Vimbi, you also wanted to give input, as was on the timelines, on the input into the actual bill?
It's not necessarily an input, Chairperson. I see today is the 23rd, and I think we've got another meeting on the 25th for the final mandate.
Yes.
So this is really just a preliminary mandate. So the actual mandate is actually going to be dealt with on Wednesday.
Yes, but we have to give the draft. Oh, sorry, you want to continue, Member Vimbi? You can.
Yes, no, that was just my question.
Yes, you have to give your draft. Today is obviously step one in the process. So we have to do this process with a draft mandate, and then the final mandate will to finalize on Wednesday. So, Zoisile, you wanted to say anything?
Chair?
Yes, will you continue?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Chair, Honorable Njadu, just on the timeline from the NCOP side, is that the matter was thoroughly considered as to legislation that we had to keep making sure that the bill is being adopted within the specific timelines of the legislation. So it's not only the Western Cape, it's all provinces which are affected on timelines. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Njabu. Yes, we hear that. Obviously, still doesn't make it right, but thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to ask for substantial comments, and I already heard from Member Regan Ellen. I'm just going to open the document that you said you emailed to me.
Chair, if you didn't get it, the email, it was also sent to the procedural officer, but I think you should have received.
I did receive your comments of opening up here. Okay, oh, sorry, Member Conlo, you want to say something, yeah?
Yes, I just want to understand how would Member Ellen would have sent you a presentation as you are just a chairperson of this session. You were just appointed here. And what are we going to do with that particular presentation now? Is it going to be shared to all of us as members of the committee, or is it going to still be presented as part of the discussion so that we at least have got a sight of the contents and what is being suggested for consideration by the committee? If you can guide there.
Yeah, okay. I've got email from Member Ellen now. Any other member that has their views that they want to give input in this committee before we give guidance on the process forward? I see Member Vimbi's hand up again, then Member Wenger. Member Vimbi?
No, it's not up, Chair.
Oh, Member Wenger was at alt hand as well.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Member Contra, anyone can give input into this committee, as you know. So Member Ellen has just sent an email, and I'm asking, is there anybody else that wants to give input on this comment, or are going to give verbal input on this bill?
Chair, verbal will be fine for me as well. But during the break, I took the liberty of emailing you and the PO to answer our good friend member Nkondlo. But thank you. I would give verbal as well.
Okay. Well, anyone can write, email, send a WhatsApp in any format. It's up to any member how they do it actually. So Member Ellen, I've got your input. Obviously, during this is the draft phase, or the first phase. Now the committee will consider a few options, and members can say. So I'm just open my document here. During this stage, members obviously had an opportunity to ask their questions and get clarity on some of the matters. So either the chairpersons for example, what this committee now have to deliberate on. The committee either express its support for the bill and obviously give reasons why. The committee expresses its support for the bill subject to certain proposed amendments. The committee either does not support the bill and the reasons should be provided, or the committee abstains from voting on the bill during the negotiation mandate and the reasons should be provided. So Member Regan Ellen's comments here, which like I said, any members obviously is welcome to share their reasons to either support or not support the bill. Member Regan Ellen, you want to say us why you not support the bill and your reasons?
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I would firstly just state from the onset that I would move that we object to this bill and not support. Let me just go to my document, one moment. I would want us to object if we consider the 1.5 billion that will be cut by the national government, Chairperson, from the provincial equitable share allocation to the Western Cape provincial government. That's more than 2 billion was already cut from the Western Cape provincial budget in the first adjustment budget as well. That now amounts to 3.5 billion within one financial year, and we can never support such a stance. Furthermore, the Western Cape province, I think, fundamentally disagrees with the current provincial equitable share formula, and there's been numerous requests to National Treasury, submitted all current criteria and the factors taken into account, the reasons as per my document. But I would want us to highlight and to be clear on the on the decreases. That is very clear. So even though there's been some amounts coming, the decreases does not speak well to the province and that share. Would you want me to continue, Chairperson? I have a 6-page document.
When did you write this 6-page document?
Member Regan Ellens, you're welcome. It's up to any member to do their to give their view on any matter, obviously. Member Regan,
my hand is up, Chair.
Sorry, before Member Regan, Member Bimbi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Maybe just before, I might also maybe as a way of debating and discussing this issue and this subject, as well as the issues that were raised by Honorable Reagan. I just want to ask, maybe just in terms of the rules, because I see Honorable Alan Reagan is the alternate member of this committee, because I'm raising this based on an experience on another committee where a member was an alternate. It was raised that he's an alternate, he's therefore not supposed to raise a proposal in the meeting. So as a way of trying to observe consistency, is it proper for Honorable Reagan being an alternate member of the committee, and bearing in mind that all members of the committee are present, that are permanent, being myself, Honorable Philander, with the exception of Honorable Bartman, is it proper for him to make that proposal, being an alternate member? As I'm saying that, I'm raising this based on an experience we had in another committee where it was raised that a certain member who was an alternate cannot raise a proposal for adoption by a committee. Before I proceed, Chair.
Chairperson.
Yes, Member L, before I respond.
Chairperson, just for the record, it was highlighted that I am standing in for a permanent member today, as per the opening remarks from our procedural officer. So I trust that the point raised by Member Mvambi is then null and void. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I think Member Vermi arrived a bit later after we did say that.
No, Chairperson, point of order.
Yeah.
It was indicated in the beginning that Honorable Allen is representing Honorable Philander, because
Not
Honorable. No, be that as it may, Chair, it does not mean that he's the permanent member. But can he still raise? That is my question. Can he still raise?
I've never heard anything in any committee that a member can't raise anything because it's an alternative. It's the first time, honestly, that I've heard of it. I don't know which committee you were in, but this is honestly the first time.
Okay.
But be that as it may, let's, yeah.
No, Chairperson, it looked like we are doubting my bona fides, and I've got no reason. No. Chairperson, just allow me. Let me, so that you are not left without any suspicions. Ne? In a committee I'm chairing, which is a standing committee on public accounts. Ne? One of the members, Honorable Nkondlo, raised a proposal in that meeting. Then Honorable America stood on a point of order and said that Honorable Nkondlo is not a member of that committee. She's therefore not allowed. So I'm not creating this thing that I'm creating. So as an issue of consistency, irrespective of Honorable Allen is not a permanent member. He is just representing Honorable Bartman, as was indicated in the beginning. So what I'm raising, I don't want you to have an impression that I'm here trying to mislead or lie to the committee. It's if you want to go to the record of the Standing Committee on Public Account, you can go there. You will find those things. So I wanted to ask whether is it proper for Honorable Allen.
Honorable Vimbi, I'm sure you know, and it's not applicable to Parliament as well. Once you stand in for another member, you've got the same rights as any other member. It's in any, whether you're a member of a soccer club or anywhere, you have the same rights once you stand in for that member. So I'm not sure what happened in the committee. I was not there. I can honestly not speak for that.
Okay, now.
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. So that's fine, Honorable Chair. So I will therefore then maybe on the issues that were actually raised by Honorable Allen regarding the reason not to support this bill. I think, for example, I've always been.
Well, sorry, Honorable Bimbi, I thought you called because he, Honorable Ellen still had to continue and finish his speech, okay. the comments he was trying to make. So I thought you were raising on a point of order, and I will just clarify that now.
Okay.
Chairperson, may I continue?
You can continue, yes. Honorable Eglan.
Thank you so much. Again, as I indicated, Chairperson, it's not to support. We've seen how the net decrease of 65 million in grants to the Western Cape province in the second adjustments, which will also affect services such as road infrastructure, agriculture support and training, land reform, health services in the HIV and AIDS, TB and COVID-19 programs, and the title deed restoration. Furthermore, there is a net decrease of 81 million in grants to the Western Cape local government in the second adjustment budget. This is also in addition to the net increase of 283 million in grant allocations to the Western Cape local governments. Furthermore, Chairperson, the SAA business rescue bailout, if we consider that SAA will be receiving 10.5 billion bailout from national government, SA has previously already received 36.9 billion in bailouts already spent. If we look at education, Chairperson, there is, in fact, in the adjustment, the following provincial education grants were cut from the Western Cape in terms of the education infrastructure grant of 159 million, the HIV and AIDS, the life skills education grant by 4.8 million, as well as the Maths and Science and Technology grant was also cut. Furthermore, there was cuts in health as well. If I go down in terms of the National Treasury service grant, that was 30 million cut. There was statutory human resources training and development grant that was cut by over 11 million. If we look at transport, the cut over there was 161 million. Agriculture, the cut was there as well, Chairperson. And to human settlements, the title deed restoration grant was cut by 23.32 million. In social development, we've seen cuts. We've seen it in sports, arts and culture with the mod centers being cut by 453 million rand. This is in addition to the 22 million that was cut in the first. Also, if we look at our safety, and we have raised previous concerns that were not addressed in the first or second adjustment budget here in the Western Cape, in terms where we had to use our own budget to fund what is ultimately a national mandate. So in fact, there's no increased funding has been allocated for this function. And I think it's very clear, Chairperson, to not support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Allen, for that input. Honorable Mvimbi, you want to give input?
Yes, I was going to request, Chairperson, that can we have access to this document that Honorable Allen has been presenting now? Because probably I'm the only one who doesn't have, so it's actually going to be difficult to even engage with it without having it. Can I also say that in the meantime, Chairperson, whilst I note what Honorable Allen has raised, and bearing in mind that also we still have to give a final mandate on Wednesday, can I just propose that then we have this document that he has presented to us available to us, and then in the meantime, I think based on the presentation that was made by National Treasury, I think it is actually befitting to actually support this this bill based on the presentation that they actually given.
Thank you. Any other members got input?
Chairperson.
Yes, you can continue, Member Kondlo.
Thank you, Chair. My input, Chair, is that considering I think what has just recently been presented, which takes place within, I think, the economic climate and environment of COVID-19, where I think government has to deal with a series of precarious challenges, both nationally and also in our province, including, I think, the last discussion we had around COE, that continues to be a challenge, in the economy. I think we have to note, I think, the much required, I think, a tightening of belt, which is something that we have all been speaking to in as far as how do we respond in this particular environment. But one wants to make a mention of two specific issues. I think one which we raised, and I think we've consistently raised, I think the issue of wasteful expenditure that continues to be a problem of spending by municipalities, where all of this money that we're talking about goes to to effect a service delivery, and that I think that particular problem needs to be highlighted. And I'm hoping that even as this particular committee, we need to actually put our eyes on the situation of wasteful expenditure that has consistently been increasing, as it's explained in the AG's reports. So I think that for me is the biggest problem we need to consider. Secondly, we need also to consider the issue of spending that has got little results in as far as changes in the lives of the citizens, as it's depicted by the mirror that we produce in this particular province as it relates to socio-economic profile of citizens of this particular province. So I think that for me is one of the challenges we need to consider. Number two, we need to consider how government does business. The national government, together with ourselves, we've seen initiatives of red tape reduction to include units which are established. There is a cost of sustaining those units to ensure that there is red tape reduction, that is, the undue paperwork and delays, in how government does business with other stakeholders, but also with itself, yields the results, because there, I think there's a lot of revenue that could be saved. And I think that particular work also should be considered in the fiscal consolidation, because I think it is one area that as government we can actually be able to convincingly to citizens demonstrate our ability to sort of do business efficiently. So I think in that fiscal consolidation, I think it's an area that we also need to make mention. And further, to support the economic recovery, because that economic recovery at the center of it is about structural challenges of an economy that we know at this point perpetuates inequality, where majority of people which are historically have been excluded in the economy continues. And if one considers the aggregate or macro statistics in terms of the black middle class or middle class in South Africa, that we still are having a challenge in increasing that particular cohort that can actually save in yielding the requisite income. So we need to support that economic recovery, because those are the things, if we're trying to balance the, the equation of how government is able to ensure the kind of issues that Member Ellen was reading, in his 6-page document, as he indicated, on how we actually get a much more stable economy. So in that regard, Chair, I'm saying I think these are inputs that are very important to create the balance that we need, because it's one thing, to talk about complaining about cuts in our budget, whilst we know even the money that we received at this point is we're still leaving much to be desired in terms of spending that money effectively, efficiently, but moreover, in demonstrating the requisite change in people's lives. So I think those for me would be inputs that I would think that we need to include in our mandate for consideration in terms of how do we balance as we are sitting with this particular challenge. And having said that, Chair, to say the work that is being done by National Treasury as it engages, and it was, I think, even acceded to here in the conversation with Provincial Treasury about how we navigate these particular challenges, should continue as we, I think, and my view is to support, I think, this adjustment budget, because this, at this point, we know, given the current environment, we're sitting with little resources, and those particular resources are resources that at one point or the other would need to have to manage. Thank you.
Chairperson.
Okay, well, Member Philander, wait, did you your hand was not up? Are you raising point of order, or you want to give input?
I would like to give input. Chairperson, my apologies in the absence of a hand function at this point.
Okay, you can continue.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I wish to support the submission made by Member Allen. Chairperson, it is highly immoral to allocate funds to SAA when essential provincial and local government programs are being cut by the national government. And I think the member made mention of that. And Chairperson, I think as members of this provincial parliament, we should vehemently oppose the SAA bailout and request that these funds be allocated by National Treasury to all provinces in terms of the current provincial equitable share chairperson, according to the formula, and that further requests that the NCOP request such as an amendment from National Treasury to the current bill in the negotiating mandate phase. Thank you, Chairperson. That's my input.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm just going to give my input based on the information that we received. The reason I asked those questions, particularly on the technical committee, was very, in my opinion, and very important. Because to make a decision to take money from any entity, there needs to be some background information, some technical information to it. And like I said, now I'll repeat it here, the cabinet decision is something else, and that us the politicians have to deal with. But the Treasury decision to not have a technical consideration into the impact of some of the decisions, that to me is just alarming. And I understand what Mrs. Wendy said when she, in the exact word she used, the political decision informed the technical process, and she tried to declassify that later on, and I can understand why. But there has to be some technical considerations for it, because us as all members are going to face serious challenge in January when schools, hospitals overflow and there are no money to fund some of this infrastructure. I mean, 159 million for my infrastructure education grant, Maths and Science, Next and Technology grant, 5 million cut. These are issues that's going to affect all of us on the ground next year. And the fact that there was no technical consideration as to how this is going to impact people on the ground is, to me, quite bizarre that Treasury didn't do it. I understand the political decision at the top, but the technical explanation, and there's no reasons given as to why there was no technical explanation done. To me, that is quite telling. And that's why I hampered on those questions, because that's, to me, is very serious, that any decision needs to have technical information at the background to inform it. Because just to say to Ricardo, or education or health, cut the billion or cut 2 billion with no, because as we all know, people are gonna not want to cut from their favorite projects, not cut because it doesn't or it does have impact on the communities. It's easy to say cut this, cut that, but if you have no technical consideration, the reasons why you cut 1 billion from SARS or 1 billion from health, 1 billion from SAPS countrywide, there must be a technical explanation as to how this is going to impact all the provinces. Unfortunately, based on Treasury's input today on their own facts, there was none. And that to me is a serious, serious holdup, and the impact on provinces next year. So that's the reason alone is why I can't support this bill, because it needs to be a technical explanation. The other reasons, of course, is members given. Like I said, I'm going to repeat that Minister Mboweni himself tweeted last night at the exact time, 6 minutes past 10, and before that he sent 4 or 5 tweets out, asked these questions after the fact. Do we need SAA? Do we need a national airline? And these are questions the minister should have asked before he gave them 10 billion. So we've taken money from the police, from health, from education, from SAPS. We know where we are with SAPS in this country. And now, 2 weeks later, the minister is asking these serious questions he should have asked before. So I cannot support the bill if the minister is still of the view that we don't need this airline, yet we still give them 10 billion. And that are valid reasons, in my view, why I cannot support this bill. And those reasons I will type up and I will email to our coordinator for to include on Wednesday. And I'll also ask any other member if they have any other reasons that they feel that should be included, including Member Allen. I will obviously see your reasons as well. The written reasons, Member Philander, your written reasons as well, Member Vimbi, Member Conroy, any other member to submit their written reasons as to why they either support or not support this bill. Wasima, anything else from your side?
Good day, Chairperson. Wasima?
I'm here.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Two sounds at the back.
Chairperson?
Oh, sorry, Wasima, Member Vimbi. Yeah, you can continue.
Yes. Is that in order that in the meantime, can we be sent Honorable Allen's 6-page submission?
Honorable Vimbi, what I'm going to do is I'll speak to Wasima on the way forward, but any submissions that you or anyone does, obviously that's your submissions that you make, and if you have obviously taken the time to do your work, and that will go to the coordinator, and I wouldn't want individual submissions. I would like the minutes to to be distributed accordingly for all members. And that will be distributed. I'm more comfortable with that. We're not going to take what is out. We'll incorporate it. Your submissions, Wendy's, my submissions that I'm going to email her, or any other member, and that will be distributed round robin as part of our minutes of this meeting.
So when will that be? Because we still have to consider the final mandate on Wednesday.
Yeah, on Wednesday, yes.
That might assist us. That might assist us in formulating.
Definitely. As soon as we done here, I'll coordinate with the Wasima. Wasima, you want to say anything?
Sorry, Chair, I was just looking for the unmute function. Members can send me well, everyone has sent the inputs and have discussed it. So when you adopt the report, it will be that these things will be included.
Thank you. So members, we have two ways forward. So Wasima, we can at this meeting obviously agree already as a draft report. Am I right?
Yes, Chairperson, there was 2 motions that was tabled. So
so members, the 2 motions that was tabled. Member Regan Allen and it's given reasons, and Member Philander has given her reasons. Member Kondlo has given her reasons, and Member Vimbi. And I think Member also supports that motion, although he has different reasons why support it, and that's obviously fine.
Support what?
You said that you do not support the bill, am I right?
No, I support the bill. I support the mandate. We must actually give a mandate to the committee to support the bill as proposed by as presented by National Treasury.
Oh, sorry, I misheard you. I'm glad that you okay, because your reason sounded like you did not support the bill. But anyway, it's fine. So Member Mvimbi do not support. Okay, so there's 2 proposals. We have Member Allen made a proposal to not support the bill, and obviously his reasons, and we'll minute all the reasons, including Member Philander reasons later on. Member Kondlo will send her reasons, and Vimbi will send his reasons. So can I just get the final draft on the negotiating mandate state? Member Regan, you just want to confirm your position, please? Sorry, I saw a hand up, Member Wenger.
Thank you, Chair. Could part of our negotiating mandate be that we be given more time to do adequate public participation on this?
Of course, yes. No, that you have raised in the start of the meeting, and we have noted that, and we will certainly put this in as well. Member Allen?
So sorry, Chairperson, I just got cut now, but I would, in terms of what I stated earlier on, is that we object to the bill.
Okay, so you're saying that you do not support the bill, and do you have a seconder for that?
Second that, Chairperson.
Thank you. The second position, Member Nkondlo?
I still maintain, Chair, we support the bill.
Thank you. Member Vimbi?
Support the bill.
Okay, thank you. I've also given my input earlier on, so I'm going to read the draft negotiating mandate. The draft so the position of Member Allen, who's now obviously a full member, as he stand in for Member Deirdre Bartman, and supported by Member Philander. We will note the following. The draft report on the Budget Committee on the 2nd Division of Revenue Amendment Bill B4 of 2020, dated today, read as followed. The Budget Committee, having considered the subject of the 2nd Division of Revenue Bill B4 of 2020 NCOF, referred to it in terms in accordance with Standing Rule 217, conferred on the Western Cape delegate in the NCOF the authority to not support the bill. The ANC and member supported by Member Mvimbi, the minority view will be noted to support the bill. That is our draft negotiating mandate, and that will be in our report, which we will finalize and send to all members as soon as it's done. Once we get all the input from all the members, that will be sent to Wasima. So that is the position of the committee, and that we'll take to our final mandate on Wednesday. I see a hand, Member Moran.
Morning, Chair. So I'm not part of this meeting.
But
You
obviously,
are a member.
I'm a member. I'm part of this meeting. I'm not a member of this meeting. Chair, I just wanted to check whether the minority view as per section 90 of the standing rules, will it be captured in the committee report?
Yes, yes, Member Maran, it will be captured, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes on that matter. Members, we have to consider the minutes held on the 28th of August, the 6th and the 20th of October. It was emailed. Wasima, can you put it on the screen, please? Thank you very much. We're starting on the 6th of October. Member Philander, Mvimbi, and myself was there. Oh, there's quite a lot of members there. Just check your attendance, members. Then you can go to page 2. Thank you. Members, if I can just make a comment, that was the meeting there. I see the chairperson, Professor Plaatjes, was there, and I'm not sure, members, if there was condolences sent on behalf of the budget committee to Professor Plaatjes's family, because he was at that meeting and he subsequently passed away. And I'm sure if members of this committee, if there wasn't done, I think it'll be the appropriate thing to do that this committee do send a card or something to the family. Is there any objection of members on that proposal?
No objection.
Thank you. If we can do something, he's been very helpful in our meetings when we had meetings and extremely knowledgeable. Yeah, we'll just get a wording with appropriate send but offered by the chairperson when she's back. Thank you. If we can continue on the next page, please, Lizette. Sorry, Lizette, the meeting of the 6th, we must just adopt that, please, before we continue on the next meeting. Member Maran, your hand is up again. Apologies, I missed it.
No, Chair, it's not up.
Okay.
It's a mistake.
Okay, no worries. If you can go down. Thank you. Can we have a mover and shaker, please, for this minutes? Member Philander, you were there. Member Wimby, you were there on the day, on the 6th of October.
Propose adoption, Chair.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. Can we go to the minutes of the 20th of October, please? Thank you. Let's check your attendance for the record, members. Thank you. You can go down. Thank you very much. Can we have a mover for the minutes, please?
Propose.
Thank you, Ma'am Wimby. At seconder.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. You can do the minutes of the 28th of August. That was also distributed. I don't see it up here. Yeah, we can just finish that minutes as well. Yep, I was there. Member Allen was there.
Proposed.
Member
Proposed.
Wimby. You rush to the next engagement. Can we just go to the second page, please? Make sure that we... Okay, the resolutions are important. Yeah, that was done, obviously, yeah, and we did that as well. Yeah, that was done as well, yeah. Thank you. Member Vimbi proposed a seconder. Member Ellen, you were there?
I second, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, members. And yeah, is there anything else, members, before we conclude this meeting? Thank you, Asima and Lizette. Thank you very much for your help. And see Shiraj has left and his team. Thank you for making all this meetings possible. Good meetings start on time and ends on time. Thank you very much, colleagues, for all your help. And Owana as well. Thank you, Owana. This is a feed meeting that I'm chairing where you're in. So thank you for being part of this team. And thank you everyone else who's here today. And this meeting is now officially adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair.